The cyan-clothed elderly man walked onto the auction stage, and the hall that was originally still noisy instantly became quiet. This old man is the auctioneer of this Tianyuan auction. You can call me Old Mu. The cyan-clothed elderly man appeared gentle and warm, like an elderly man filled with love. However, many people present knew that this seemingly harmless elderly man on stage acted according to his feelings and was even rather ruthless. The Tianyuan auction was originally held every 5 years, but due to some special circumstances, it was scheduled ahead of time. I believe this is also what everyone is looking forward to. This old man won't say more. The auction will start now. After Old Mu finished succinctly, he shot a burst of elemental energy to the middle of the auction stage. One saw that a crystal column slowly rose from the center of the auction stage and there was a jade slip exuding an aura of primitive simplicity. This is a volume of heaven rank body refining method. One only requires the blood of demonic beasts to assist in body tempering cultivation. After perfecting it, the body is comparable to a tier 9 demonic beast. Old Mu smiled and said, I believe that I don't need to say more and everyone already knows the value of this method. What has always been lacking on Tianling continent are body refining methods. Something that is this complete, and with the body refining method being so easy to begin, it is rare, so fellow Taoists must not miss it. Seeing the people below staring at the jade slip on the crystal column with fiery eyes, Old Mu smiled with satisfaction and continued, the starting price for this volume of heaven rank body refinement method is 50,000 low-quality spiritual stones, the lowest increase is 1,000 spiritual stones, the auction begins. As soon as his voice fell, the entire auction hall resounded with loud call for bids. Bids. 100,000 spiritual stones. 200,000. When it reached 700,000 spiritual stones, many people silenced, but the price still continued to soar. Soar. 900,000. Huo Ling Long called. 910,000. The private room opposite shouted. 1 million. Huo Ling Long's lazy voice came out. 1,010,000. The voice on the other side sounded as if they were gritting their teeth. 1,200,000. Huo Ling Long continued calling without even blinking. 1,210,000. The voice on the other side was filled with anger. Just as everyone was waiting for Huo Ling Long to continue to bid, she stopped. After Old Mu announced the transaction of 1,210,000, a gloomy voice came from the private room opposite. Huo Ling Long, you're good. Huo Ling Long chuckled lightly, pressed the button on the table and said, thank you for the compliment. But the way you bid, you old thing, sure is too stingy. Bidding by 10,000s, boring. The people present couldn't resist twitching the corners of their lips, but there wasn't anything wrong with bidding prices 10,000 by 10,000. If everyone was like her, increasing prices by 100,000 each time, who would be able to handle that? Huo Ling Long, don't be arrogant. So what if Laonyang is arrogant? Everyone present now understood. Huo Ling Long deliberately raised the price against the other party. Naturally, Old Mu wouldn't blame her for doing it, had rather she come out to be a disturbance. When the people in several other private rooms and many people below heard the 3 words Huo Ling Long, they couldn't help but feel their head go numb. This demon woman actually came. Who knew what stuff would happen this time? Alright, let's take a look at the second auction item. Old Mu stood out in time to stop the conflict between the two. After the bidding just now, Headmaster Feng's grim expression was much better. Huo Ling Long, how Shan old man was cheated last time by Ao Rong, and this time, you made him pay an extra 300,000 more spiritual stones to win that body refining method. I wonder if that old fellow would vomit blood in anger. It's naturally impossible for the vast mountain sect to let go of such a body refining method. Huo Ling Long said with a smile, it's good for your health to vomit some blood, I'm also helping him. Headmaster Feng coughed drily in speechlessness. This woman really was shameless, but only this female tyrant dragon dared to so blatantly cheat the headmasters and elders of the other sects. The following auction items were auctioned off one by one, and not only were the items high grade, but even the prices paid were terrifyingly high. The next auction item is a wind attribute spar that was condensed in the Dark Wind Canyon, one of the 10 treacherous zones, for thousands of years. The spar contains a strong wind attribute energy, and according to the high-level appraisers of our Tianyuan city, the wind attribute energy within already gives it the ability to be a comprehension stone. If a sword master with the wind attribute elemental energy refine the wind attribute within, their wind attribute elemental energy has hope of advancing a level. Such a spar is naturally formed, exceptionally precious, and rare to meet in thousands of years. The sword masters with the wind attribute in the entire auction house were staring at the fist-sized stone with cyan ripples placed on a tray on the crystal pillar. Lu Muyan's eyes lit up. Her wind elemental energy attribute entered the understanding realm because of the last battle with Di Shi Tian, but she didn't improve at all after that. This wind comprehension spar that was condensed for thousands of years was of great benefit to her, and she had to win it no matter what. Not only did Lu Muyan's eyes lit up, but also the pupils who sat here with the wind attribute element. Even the eyes of Bing Ji, who stood on Lu Muyan's shoulder, revealed desire. That wind attribute comprehension stone contains a few traces of wind essence. It's very helpful for you and Bing Ji to comprehend the wind attribute element. Mo Yan's voice also sounded in Lu Muyan's mind. The edge of Lu Muyan's lips raised in an arc. Mo Yan looked at spiritual items of heaven and earth with sharp, discerning eyes. The sword master who took out this wind attribute spar shouldn't have discovered the wind essence in it, otherwise Old Mu wouldn't have not mentioned it. I wonder if anyone else here can see that wind essence is hidden in it. Lu Mu Yen and Mo Yen communicated in their sea of consciousness. When those slivers of wind essence were formed, they were covered by the wind attribute energy in the spar, so others shouldn't be able to see it. Mo Yen paused, then said, but even if no one can notice the wind essence inside, this kind of comprehension stone is extremely precious, and the price definitely wouldn't be low. What could you do even if the price is high? I'm definitely going to win this spar. Old Mu noticed that the emotions of many people below had been stimulated, then he opened his mouth and said slowly, the starting price of this wind attribute comprehension stone is at 100,000 low-quality spiritual stones, and the lowest price increase is 10,000. 500,000. As soon as his voice fell, someone couldn't hold it in and shouted. 800,000. 1 million. The heat of bidding didn't drop at all, and the price was quickly pushed up by someone to 1,500,000. Lu Mu Yen noticed that the voices in the hall were gradually decreasing, then she pressed the button on the chair and bid a price, 1,800,000. Hearing her bid, the people in the 8 Extreme Sect's private room, including the 2 headmasters, were shocked. Junior Sister Lu, can you comprehend the wind element? Jian Yang asked in a whisper in shock. Lu Mu Yen pointed at Bing Ji on her shoulder with a helpless expression, I'm buying it for my spirit pet. Was being this extravagant necessary just to buy something for a spirit pet? That's 1,800,000 spiritual stones. But before the pupils in the private room responded, a clear female voice sounded from the private room beside the vast mountain sect. 2 million. Huo Linglong and Headmaster Feng couldn't resist furrowing their brows when they heard the voice opposite. That's the private room for the headmasters of the Heavenly Secret Palace and their inner sect pupils. Headmaster Feng knocked on the table as he said. Lu Mu Yen glanced at the opposite side lightly, then added, 2,100,000. 2,200,000. The other party didn't hesitate at all. 2,500,000. Lu Mu Yen raised the price directly. Seeing how Lu Mu Yen increased the price without any hesitations, the corners of the pupils' lips present couldn't resist twitching wildly. Headmaster Hui indeed taught her well, it seemed she didn't even care for the spiritual stones. Could she not mentally attack them poor people? 2,800,000. The other party also persevered. The bidding price of the two had already exceeded the bottom price of everyone present, so no one continued bidding. 3 million. Lu Mu Yen played with her teacup and shouted casually. 3,200,000. There was a hint of anger in the other party's voice. Lu Mu Yen furrowed her brows slightly, 3,500,000. She knew that the other party should also have the intention of wanting to comprehend the wind element, so it wasn't worth adding tens of thousands onto it bit by bit, might as well add directly to the other party's bottom price to save time. Lu girl, don't act based on emotions. Headmaster Feng felt his flesh hurt when he saw Lu Mu Yen maintain her calm appearance while increasing the price. Headmaster Feng, I'm not acting based on emotions. Lu Mu Yen blinked, my spirit pet really needs that wind attribute comprehension stone. Alright, just pretend I didn't say anything. Headmaster Feng smiled shyly. The pupils of that female tyrant dragon sure were arrogant and unbridled one after the other. To spend so much just for their spirit pet, it's truly crazy. Although it was a tier 9 spirit pet, but it wasn't worth it at all. After all, it was impossible to obtain a lot of room for improvement from a comprehension stone at that level. That's why the Sword Saint powerhouses who were previously bidding would give up. After all, the price had completely exceeded the value of the spar. 3,600,000. There was obvious displeasure in the other party's voice. Lu Mu Yen could tell that the woman's voice not only contained displeasure, but even a hint of killing intent. Her eyes grew cold. For some reason, she had a feeling that that woman and she were destined to be enemies. 3,700,000. She was already close to the other party's bottom price, so she naturally wouldn't bid too much. 3,800,000. The other party's voice was extremely cold. Lu Mu Yen raised an eyebrow slightly and said lightly, 3,900,000. After she called out this price, the other party didn't speak again for a long time. The smile on old Mu's eyes couldn't be concealed. He really didn't expect that the two juniors from the 8 Extreme Sect and the Heavenly Secret Palace would push the price of the Wind Attribute Comprehension Stone to such a high level. This was about 3 times the price of the spar itself. He opened his mouth to ask if anyone else would continue to bid, then announced the ownership of the Wind Attribute Comprehension Stone. Lu Mu Yen knew that the other party who made the bid was probably already hateful of her, but she also spent an extra 2 million more spiritual stones because the other party bid for it, so she also remembered her in her heart. Of course, she didn't feel it was a loss at all, but actually a huge profit. After all, if they discovered that this Wind Attribute Comprehension Stone contained a few traces of wind essence, then the price would probably be bid until at least 5 million spiritual stones. Soon, a steward of the Tianyuan auction sent the Wind Attribute Comprehension Stone to the private room, and Lu Mu Yen also took out a bag of spiritual stones to trade. Junior Sister Lu, you sure are generous. A pupil of the taming school couldn't resist but say enviously. The other pupils were also bitter and envious inwardly. The 2 million spiritual stones they had already made them feel as if it was a lot of wealth, but a certain Lu Mu Yen casually took out 3,900,000 to buy something for her spirit pet. Truly, it was comparing oneself to another could definitely infuriate oneself to death, but at the same time as being envious, they were also puzzled. Where did she, a newly promoted inner sect pupil, and a person who was also from a small kingdom, obtain so many spiritual stones? Was it privately subsidized by Headmaster Hua? Everyone speculated wildly, and in the end, they attributed Lu Mu Yen using such a large amount of spiritual stones to Headmaster Hua. Headmaster Feng looked cryptically between Hu Linglong and Lu Muyen, guessing that the female tyrant dragon was probably won over by Lu Muyen and subsidized a lot of spiritual stones privately. He sighed and had to admit that the women of the sect were not only violent and cruel, but also extremely rich. Today, even if he took out more than 3 million spiritual stones to buy a wind attribute comprehension stone, he would be reluctant. Lu Muyen smiled faintly but didn't answer. She didn't make a loss in using this much spiritual stones. In the private room of the heavenly secret palace, a woman dressed in white with a sweet and spirit-like appearance quickly concealed the haze and murderous intent in her eyes, still looking pure and lively. She appeared disappointed and her voice was crisp and sweet. I wonder who the other party is, actually spending so many spiritual stones to win the wind attribute comprehension stone. An elderly man sitting beside her furrowed his brows. I heard that the 8 Extreme sect asked a little girl to participate in the 6 competitions this time. It's very likely that the person who bid just now was her. Did those old things of the 8 Extreme sect go crazy? A headmaster beside him sneered. They think that letting a girl out to participate in all 6 competitions could help her be comparable to Qi Xiu? After he said this, no one in the room noticed that there was killing intent in the eyes of the peerlessly handsome man with a gentle gaze, but with a cold temperament. Hearing the headmaster mention Qi Xiu, the pupils of the heavenly secret palace all looked at Qi Xiao's temperament was like a fallen immortal that had descended to this world with admiration. They thought to themselves, what qualifications did a little girl have to be compared with their senior brother Qi? She wasn't even worth carrying his shoes. Senior brother Qi is a peerless genius who understood all 5 specializations. It would be alike indulging in the wildest fantasy for the pupils of the other sect to think to surpass him. The sweet woman in white smiled and looked at Qi Xiu secretly, with a deep expression of love in her eyes. Holding a cup of spiritual tea in his hand, Ming Xiu sat quietly and leisurely, appearing indifferent, remained silent. Not to mention Qi Xiu, even Fei Yao, Yu, a young genius who had just been promoted to the inner sect, makes it difficult for others to compare to. The headmaster of the alchemy school said lovingly. Bai Fei Yao's large eyes rippled with light, and she said shyly, Headmaster overpraises. It's a pity for that wind attribute comprehension stone, but for such a high price, that girl from the 8 Extreme sect is nothing, acting too much on her emotions. Bai Fei Yao bit her lip and sighed. Originally I wanted to win this wind attribute comprehension stone and gift it to little sister, but who knew it would be snatched by the pupil of the 8 Extreme sect. She wanted to vomit inwardly and cursed the woman who bid against her secretly. Killing intent flashed by. No one dared to snatch her things like this all her life. That woman had better pass a few rounds in the grand competition for her own sake, otherwise if she met her, then she would definitely make her pay a heavy price for snatching her spar today. Fei Yao, you're just too kind. That kind of wild thing isn't worth your attention. A handsome man who appeared somewhat similar to Bai Fei Yao said disapprovingly. When Bai Fei Yao heard her elder brother's words, a somewhat innocent look appeared on her face, but she was secretly proud. That wild thing really wasn't worth her attention. Winning that wind element comprehension stone wasn't for that trash at all, but because she was robbed by the pupil of the 8 Extreme sect, so she just found an excuse. Elder brother, don't say that about Luo Yin, she's our little sister after all. Humph, I don't have that kind of little sister that can't be brought to the stage. The man snorted coldly with arrogance and disdain, then looked at Bai Fei Yao with a gentle gaze. You're the only little sister of mine. Elder brother. Bai Fei Yao glared cutely at Bai Fei Chen. With her peripheral vision, she secretly glanced at the tall and handsome man sitting opposite, as if she couldn't look at him enough. In front of senior brother Qi, she must always maintain the purest and sweetest side. She put away all the edges and corners and turned into a beautiful and kind woman who was liked by the sect leader, elders and other pupils of the sect. It was all only for him. From the first time she saw this handsome man who was like a deity, she let herself sink further and further in. Each time she heard more about him, looked more at him, the intense love in her heart almost couldn't resist being released. But she held back. She, who had a noble status, made everyone in the sect like her, but he was the only one who was still very indifferent. So she pretended to only admire him as well as distance herself from him, only to attract his attention. She always knew how to use the advantages of women to make men fall in love with her. She endured not to take the initiative to express her love to him, only for the day when he would take the initiative to fall in love with her. She also silently believed that that day might arrive soon. Among all the females of the heavenly secret palace, she was the best in terms of identity, background, status, and talent. Who else could he choose if he didn't choose an equally excellent partner as himself? There was an arc of anticipation in her eyes, waiting for the man named Qi Xiu who lived in her heart to be dreaming about her. She had the capital and confidence. Meanwhile, right now, the Ming Xiu who Bai Fei Yao loved and daydreamed about, was currently filled with thoughts about his woman. Remembering how Lu Muyen was like a lazy and cunning fox when she was cutely held in his arms, his heart grew astonishingly hot. He really wanted to take her into his arms and kiss her again. Ming Xiu was thinking intensely about Lu Muyen, and his thin lips inadvertently evoked a beautiful arc. It was just that this merry arc made by Fei Yao, who was peeking at him, misunderstand. She couldn't help but almost jump for joy. Senior brother Qi really liked her who was pure and kind. Otherwise why would he reveal such a rare happy expression when she was pretending to be naive and defend that wild thing? On the other hand, Lu Muyen who was sitting on the other side didn't know that her man was being coveted by a venomous snake in rabbit skin. Of course, even if she knew, she wouldn't care about that kind of woman. If Ming Xiu was really that easily taken away by other women, then he wouldn't be worthy of her continuing to like him. She always believed him, just as he always believed her. The tacit understanding between them was simply not something others could step in between. She played with the wind attribute comprehension stone in her hand and felt the boundless wind element energy inside, in a good mood. The woman who bid just now should be that proud daughter of heaven with the wood communication constitution of the heavenly secret sect, right? Huo Linglong didn't like that woman very much just by hearing the voice. Headmaster Feng nodded with a bit of admiration on his face. Her name is Bai Fei Yao. She not only has the wood communication spiritual body but is also the granddaughter of an ancestor of the heavenly secret palace. She has strong talent and abilities and is called the rising star among the newly promoted inner sect pupils after Qi Xiu. What's the wood communication spiritual body? Lu Mu Yen didn't know much about the spiritual bodies on this continent, so she asked Mo Yen telepathically. Mo Yen replied, the wood communication spiritual body can allow one to comprehend the wood attribute elemental energy from birth and is naturally compatible with spiritual woods and spiritual herbs. Most people with the wood communication spiritual body can comprehend fire elemental energy, and with no accident, would all become high-grade alchemists. So there's such a spiritual body. Lu Mu Yen pondered for a moment. Do people who have the wood communication spiritual body basically have no bottleneck when breaking through the grades in alchemy? As far as she knew, there was a kind of innate spiritual body in the immortal cultivation world, which allowed one to have almost no bottlenecks in cultivation beneath the incarnation stage, and also known as the darling of heaven. She wondered if that Bai Fei Yao woman was the same. There's no bottleneck below grade 5, which means even at worst, a person with the wood communication spiritual body could be a grade 4 alchemist. Mo Yen continued, such a person's innate talent in alchemy will be higher than that of ordinary alchemists, so even if there is a bottleneck after entering grade 5, it wouldn't be an experience like normal alchemists have. Lu Mu Yen nodded, curbing the look in her eyes as she pondered. Headmaster, what rank is Bai Fei Yao as an alchemist? Luo Cheng's expression changed after hearing about the wood communication spiritual body, and he couldn't resist asking. Headmaster Feng sighed and said, as far as I know, Bai Fei Yao has already advanced to a grade 5 alchemist 3 months ago and is among the pupils of the 8 extreme sects alchemy school. Luo Cheng's talent was already very good. He was a high-level grade 4 alchemist, but compared to that favored daughter of heaven, he was still much inferior. As for Lu Mu Yen, he didn't have much hope for her at all. Even if she took out a lot of grade 4 pills to exchange at the sect's contribution points management office, it only showed that she might be a grade 4 alchemist, so how could she compete with Bai Fei Yao for the championship? So this time, he didn't quite understand why the superiors of the sect would make such a move to allow Lu Mu Yen to occupy 6th place. He only hoped that she really was a grade 4 alchemist. Not to mention entering the top 3, even being able to enter the top 10 would be considered gaining face for the sect. Bai Fei Yao is a grade 5 alchemist with a wood communication spiritual body. Isn't that even better than that genius that the medicine sect raised secretly? Huo Linglong furrowed her brows slightly. That's not exactly right either. Bai Fei Yao's alchemy skills improving so fast has a lot to do with her constitution, but that genius of the medicine sect has solid amazing talent in alchemy. Headmaster Feng's expression was solemn, although it's always been rumored that he is only a high-level grade 4 alchemist, but I suspect that he already advanced to grade 5. Then hasn't your alchemy school met some strong opponents? Huo Linglong raised an eyebrow. Headmaster Feng rolled his eyes at her. How was it as simple as meeting some strong opponents when meeting against those two? Let everything be with fate. Isn't there a third place to compete for? Headmaster Feng's expectation for the alchemy school this time was for at least 2 to enter the top 10. Fighting for third place was actually an extravagant hope. Huo Linglong sneered and said sarcastically, your goal sure is lofty. It wasn't unreasonable that the 8 extreme sect was declining more and more. The way these old fellows did things was too conservative. Subduing without fighting was probably talking about people like this. She turned her gaze to Lu Mu Yen and saw that her expression fluctuated only slightly when hearing of Bai Fei Yao and that genius of the medicine sect, but not have the slightest worry or fear, and instead, revealed an excited fighting intent as if she was about to meet a good match. The corners of her lips curled up. Perhaps the choice of the superiors of the sect this time was a wise decision. Headmaster Feng smiled bitterly and didn't want to argue with Huo Linglong anymore. Who didn't want to compete for the top 3, but his pupils needed to have that strength. The auction was still ongoing. With the auction of high-level spiritual items, magic tools, pills, talismans, manuals and such, the auction also reached a climax. I believe everyone can't wait. We will now start to auction the 10 finale products of this Tianyuan auction. Old Mu's voice was a little excited. We Tianyuan City took a lot of effort to find these 10 finale items and we will definitely not disappoint fellow Taoists. The first finale auction item is a defensive pagoda and it's also a peak-quality saint treasure. After Old Mu's voice fell, he saw a half-foot-long, tooth-white pagoda with a primitive simplicity appear on the crystal column rising in the center of the auction stage. This saint treasure pagoda has a total of 7 levels. The great masters that refined each layer had added restrictions and arrays, and each time a layer is unlocked, the defense ability will increase by 1 level. Old Mu continued to introduce with slight excitement, this treasured pagoda is suitable for all sword masters under sword deity. Based on cultivation base and strength, it will unlock the layer of defense, and when the 7th layer is unlocked, it can also withstand the continuous succession of sword deity level powerhouse attacks 3 times. Most importantly is that when the 7th layer withstands the sword deity attack, it isn't exhausted. As long as you give it 3 days then reactivate the 7th layer, you can still resist 3 attacks. It's definitely a life-saving trump card. Hearing Old Mu's introduction, many sword masters present were boiling with excitement. Even the sword saints sitting in the private rooms were tempted. Such a peak-quality saint treasure is rarely found in the world. The starting price of the 7-layer defense pagoda is 1 million low-quality spiritual stones, and the increasing price must not be lower than 10,000 spiritual stones each time. The auction will start now. 2 million. 5 million. Soon, this defensive pagoda was bid to a high price of 8 million. 8.5 million. Huo Linglong called out after a long silence. Hearing Huoling Long's voice, many headmasters and elders of the other 5 sects felt a headache and cursed inwardly why the sect leader of the 8 extremes sect would send this demoness for this grand competition. 9 million. A majestic voice came from the sword sect's private room. Huoling Long pouted and continued to bid, 9.5 million. Headmaster Feng was actually very tempted by this defensive pagoda, but he was more inclined to the 7-colored glazed cauldron, so he gave up this bid. And the price of nearly 10 million spiritual stones was basically hollowing out his saving. 10 million. The vast mountain sect's private room shouted. 12 million. Huoling Long maniacally increased the price again. The people present were extremely speechless towards Huoling Long. This demoness didn't play cards according to the rules. Was there such a way to bid? Adding 2 million at a time was crazy enough, but she did have that capital to be arrogant. This price also made several headmasters wonder if she really wanted it. Or was she deliberately topping the price as always to toy with people? In the end the private rooms of the 5 sects went silent. They were afraid that Huoling Long would play tricks. After all, they spent too much spiritual stones earlier, so if there were better auction items later, they would lose more than their gains. So Huoling Long bought the defensive pagoda for 12 million. Congratulations to headmaster. Lu Mu Yen could see that the value of the pagoda wasn't just worth 12 million, but more, so Huoling Long benefited. Huoling Long said with a smile, looks like they understand. The people in the private room couldn't resist twitching the corners of their mouths when she said this. So this female tyrant dragon's pressure didn't only affect the 8 extreme sect, but even the other sects weren't spared. There was a curious smile in Lu Mu Yan's eyes. It seemed that Huoling Long wasn't as simple as she seemed, otherwise violence alone wouldn't make people of the same level in the 6 sects fear her. Next, several items were auctioned off that made the Sword Saint powerhouses act one after another. Headmaster Feng reluctantly spent 15 million spiritual stones to win a spiritual herb that could help improve a Sword Saint's cultivation base. 10 finale items, each costing more than the last. Now the auction's penultimate item, the 7-colored glazed cauldron. Old Mu walked to the slowly rising crystal column, pointed to a bedazzling colorful 7-colored glazed cauldron and said, this is a peak-quality saint treasure. As long as it recognizes you as owner, you can scale the size of the cauldron yourself, and it can also be used as a defensive magic tool. Of course, it's not just these 2 functions that make the 7-colored glazed cauldron exciting. Old Mu paused then said, the 7-colored glazed cauldron has another special feature. It's not only a pill cauldron, but also a smithing cauldron, and it can also refine materials for talismans and arrays. It's a multi-purpose cauldron. Not only that, but the 7-colored glazed cauldron can also withstand the high temperatures required for refining high-quality pills or magic tools. With the help of mutant flames, the refining effect of this cauldron would be even better, and there may even be unexpected surprises. Besides this, the 7-colored glazed cauldron also has one of the most valuable functions, which I believe most of the people here aren't aware of. Old Mu saw that everyone present was focused on the 7-colored glazed cauldron, eager to hear what he would say next, their emotions extremely high. Have you heard of any kind of cauldron that can improve the pill rate refined and the success rate of smithing? Old Mu asked. Someone below exclaimed immediately, Old Mu, do you mean that this 7-colored glazed cauldron can also improve the rate of pills in refining and the success rate of refining tools? This fellow Taoist guessed correctly. The 7-colored glazed cauldron has such an effect, so it's qualified to be the penultimate item in today's finale. Gasp. There was a loud gasp from below. Many sword masters who already wanted to win the 7-colored glazed cauldron didn't expect it to have such heaven-defying effect, and they couldn't resist boiling with excitement, wanting to win it even more. Heavens. It's the first time I've heard of a cauldron that can refine pills, tools, and refine materials for talismans and arrays. That's not the point. The point is that this cauldron can also increase the number of pills refined, and the success rate of refining tools. Such an effect is heaven-defying. I bet you all don't know. Someone said mysteriously, I heard that this 7-colored glazed cauldron was made by an ancient almighty. The refining materials used include 7 kinds of elemental energy attributes, and all of them are heaven-rank spiritual items. If there's no such effect, then it'd be a waste of those good materials. So that's how it is. Such a precious cauldron, I wonder how much it'll go for. Regardless of how much, it's not something that we can afford to buy. No matter how high the price is, I'm satisfied with just being able to feast my eyes. Someone sighed and said. Most of the people sitting in the lobby in front of the auction stage were the children and pupils of major empires and distinguished clans on Tianling continent, with status and backgrounds, and also a rather deep foundation, but they still could hardly compare to those in the private rooms. Yeah. Even if someone with a cultivation background like us have the ability to win it, they may not have the life to enjoy it. Brother, you're right, such a peak-quality cauldron is a weapon in the hands of the strong, but it's definitely a call to death in our hands. Whispers spread below while the Sword Saint powerhouses in the private room were ready to act. Old Mu, stop teasing us, let's begin the auction quickly. Finally someone in a private room couldn't wait and urged. Previous chapter. Old Mu deliberately teased to create such an exciting auction atmosphere. He smiled and said, alright, this old man won't be long-winded anymore. The starting price of this 7-colored glazed cauldron is 3 million low-quality spiritual stones, and the increase in price must not be lower than 50,000 spiritual stones. The auction starts now. 4 million. As soon as his voice fell, someone couldn't wait to start bidding. 6 million. 10 million. The bids in the auction continued to soar and the price quickly rose above 20 million. Lu Muyen didn't expect that the seven-colored glazed cauldron would have so many features and effects, but of course, the more powerful the function, the better. However, she couldn't help but sigh that she couldn't afford the seven-colored glazed cauldron even if she sold the soul-nourishing wood. As she thought, even if she sold more of the spiritual items on her and collected enough spiritual stones to win the seven-colored glazed cauldron, there might be attempted assassinations on her to seize the treasure before the grand competition of the 6 major sects was even over. Although she had the ability to skip stage battle, and against 1 or 2 sword saints, she could still kill by borrowing Mo Yan's secret skill, but if she encountered 4, 5, or even 7 or 8 sword saint powerhouses surrounding her, then she could only escape. Among the finale items, she was actually interested in 2 of them, but she didn't participate in the auction. Firstly, the final price was higher than the spiritual stones she carried, and secondly, she didn't want to have people target her. But the seven-colored glazed cauldron meant something different to her. If it wasn't for Ming Xiao who offered to win it for her earlier, then even if she was under the pressure of potential assassination, she would definitely have auctioned off her other spiritual items to gather enough spiritual stones to win the seven-colored glazed cauldron. Old Feng, don't you want to bid? Huo Linglong asked with a teasing smile as she looked at Headmaster Feng. Headmaster Feng smiled bitterly and said, not to mention that most of the spiritual stones I had was used to buy that spiritual herb, even if I didn't spend it, I wouldn't win the seven-colored glazed cauldron. You can sell a few of your spiritual items for spiritual stones. Huo Linglong smiled and urged, the seven-colored glazed cauldron can increase the rate of pill production. As a grade 6 alchemist, are you willing to watch someone else win it? Headmaster Feng shook his head, I can't bear it. Then that's right. Hurry up and go sell some spiritual items to join the auction. Huo Linglong sipped her tea and said, after this village, then there might not be this shop anymore, and the seven-colored glazed cauldron will belong to someone else. Hearing Huo Linglong instigating Headmaster Feng, the pupils present couldn't help but smile. Encouraging me like this to go buy it, it's not because you want me to take out that spiritual liquid and sell it to you, right? Headmaster Feng looked at Huo Linglong deeply and asked. Huo Linglong also didn't deny it, that's exactly what I thought, will you sell it? It's already past 25 million, if you don't start now, it'll be gone. Then she reminded. Headmaster Feng cast his eyes on the seven-colored glazed cauldron and finally gritted his teeth and said, 30 million spiritual stones, no second price, if you want it I'll sell it to you. Alright, deal. With a thought, Huo Linglong immediately tossed him an interspatial ring. Headmaster Feng took the ring and swept the spiritual stones inside. After checking it, he reluctantly took out the bottle of spiritual liquid that he tried so hard to obtain and handed it to her. Old Feng, it's already 30 million, hurry up and bid, what are you looking at me for? Huo Linglong rolled her eyes at him and put away the spiritual liquid with a smile. This stingy old thing was definitely bleeding in his heart this time. 32 million. Headmaster Feng shouted. The price began to increase slowly now, and in the end, there were only a few bidders left. 35 million. Bai Fei Yao held her hands tightly under her sleeves. She had never spent so many spiritual stones before. But fortunately, before she came to Tianyuan City, her paternal grandfather had investigated a lot about the seven-colored glazed cauldron and specially prepared 50 million spiritual stones for her to participate in the auction. 36 million. Headmaster Feng was almost close to his limit. 40 million. An old voice sounded from one of the mysterious private rooms. The headmaster of the alchemy school of the Heavenly Secret Palace originally wanted to bid, but when he heard 40 million, he could only give up. Bai Fei Yao furrowed her brows and continued to shout, 41 million. Although she bid such a high price, but the pupils in the private room weren't surprised. After all, she had a sword deity level paternal grandfather, no? 45 million. The other party continued to speak. Bai Fei Yao bit her lip and shouted, 46 million. At this time, her palms were all sweaty, her heart seemed to be hovering, and her expression excited and nervous. After shouting out that price, she sat and looked at the calm Qi Xiu opposite. She sucked in a deep breath and suppressed the excitement and nervousness that had appeared for the first time. 50 million. The other party had obviously made up his mind to win this cauldron. Hearing this price, Bai Fei Yao's face turned pale. Was she actually going to miss out on the seven-colored glazed cauldron? Looking deeply at the gorgeous cauldron on the stage, she suddenly felt an indescribable sense of sadness and disappointment. She had 50 million spiritual stones on her, and with her excelling talent, she thought that only she was worthy of using the seven-colored glazed cauldron, but she didn't expect that there would be an extra variable. What was the origin of the other party? They were so rich. Could it be someone from the Pill Tower? Not only was she wondering, the others were also guessing who the mysterious figure in that private room was. Old Mu heard that the price reached 50 million spiritual stones with a look of joy on his face and asked, is there a higher price than 50 million spiritual stones? I will count to 10, if there is no one higher than this price, then this seven-colored glazed cauldron will belong to the guest in private room number 8. When Old Mu counted to 9 and everyone thought that the seven-colored glazed cauldron would be taken by the person in private room number 8, Ming Xiu spoke. 51 million. His bidding also shocked everyone in the private room of the Heavenly Secret Palace. Was Qi Xiu this rich? 53 million. The other party's tone grew colder. Ming Xiu casually continued to speak, 55 million. He pretty much guessed the other party's bottom price was this, and sure enough, after a while, the other party's voice didn't sound again. And Ming Xiu's bidding price obviously pushed this auction to the peak. No one thought that a pupil of the Heavenly Secret Palace could call out such a high price to win the 7-colored glazed cauldron. Old Mu asked again, and finally the 7-colored glazed cauldron was sent to the private room of Heavenly Secret Palace. A glimmer of hope suddenly rose in Bai Fei Yao's heart. She wondered if Qi Xiu won the 7-colored glazed cauldron for her. After all, although Qi Xiu's talent in alchemy was also excellent, but he wasn't as strong as her and that person from the medicine sect. In the last 6 major sects competition, Qi Xiu won the first place in the alchemy competition, but he was only a high-level grade 4 alchemist. It was also because in that session, there weren't any talented pupils with strong alchemy talent in the other sects, so he won. Meanwhile right now she was a grade 5 alchemist, and the 7-colored glazed cauldron was also a cauldron she dreamt of owning. Did he know her thoughts? Did Brother Qi really win it for her? When the steward left with 55 million spiritual stones, Ming Xiu looked at the 7-colored glazed cauldron on the table and his phoenix eyes were filled with a smile. Presumably that little fox would also like this 7-colored glazed cauldron. Senior Brother Qi, can you let me have a look at the 7-colored glazed cauldron? Bai Fei Yao had a pure and innocent look on her face as she raised her head and looked up at Ming Xiu eagerly. Aside from Bai Fei Yao, the people in the private room of the Heavenly Secret Palace actually also wanted to look at the 7-colored glazed cauldron, but they found it hard to ask. Seeing Bai Fei Yao ask, everyone looked at the cauldron on the table with scorching eyes. With a wave, the 7-colored glazed cauldron landed in Ming Xiu's hand, and he said indifferently, I don't like others touching my things. Then he put the 7-colored glazed cauldron away and didn't care about Bai Fei Yao's face that instantly paled. Ming Xiu's actions also made everyone present stunned. They didn't expect that he wouldn't give Bai Fei Yao even a little bit of face and showed no pity or tender care for Jade. Bai Fei Chen's expression revealed a bit of anger, but the moment he met Ming Xiu's warm but icy eyes, he was completely intimidated and the words he originally wanted to scold made full circle in his mouth and he swallowed it. Senior Brother Qi, I have no other intentions. Bai Fei Yao's large eyes were filled with tears, but she held back her tears and appeared kind and innocent. Ming Xiu smiled lightly and said meaningfully, as long as you don't have any other intentions. He had seen countless women like Bai Fei Yao, all of them relying on the identity that they were favored daughters of heaven to be rude and headstrong, or overbearing and arrogant, or gentle and controlled, or like Bai Fei Yao who clearly had a temperament that was sinister and venomous like a colorful serpent, yet wanted to pretend to be a simple rabbit. Although he didn't have many thoughts on the first 3 types, but also didn't dislike those, but he just so happened to very much dislike those like Bai Fei Yao, a woman who was good at disguising and who thought that she could play everyone in the palm of her hands. Compared to Bai Fei Yao, Ming Xiu felt that his family's Yan Yan was simply too cute and loving. In fact, if Bai Fei Yao revealed her true temperament, maybe Ming Xiu wouldn't be so disgusted with her. But she prided herself on hiding deep enough to make everyone love her, but she didn't know that Ming Xiu wasn't an ordinary man at all, so how could he fall into that simple and innocent disguise of hers? Most importantly, he didn't like simple and kind women at all. Such women weren't his type. In the 8 extreme sects private room. The person who bid just now was Qi Xiu, the number 1 person in the inner sect of the Heavenly Secret Palace, right? Huoling Long's eyes revealed a bit of playfulness. Headmaster Feng nodded, it's him. But I didn't expect him to be richer than Bai Fei Yao. It seems that his identity isn't as simple as it appeared. When Lu Mu Yen heard the two mention Ming Xiu, the bottom of her eyes were dyed with a soft color. Ming Xiu's identity in the Heavenly Secret Palace was also very extraordinary, not to mention that he was the monarch of the Ming Chamber of Commerce Alliance. We're really old. Huoling Long sighed, now we can't even win in an auction from a junior. Headmaster Feng couldn't resist rolling his eyes inwardly when he heard her words. The pupils here didn't know Huoling Long's family foundation, but he knew a bit, plus the sword deity grandmother as her backing. It would be weird if this female tyrant dragon was poor. She just had no interest in the 7-colored glazed cauldron, otherwise the price today might not only be 55 million. How is Headmaster old? Lu Mu Yen chuckled and said jokingly, you're so beautiful and moving, if you stand up and say that you want to find a dual cultivation partner, I guarantee that the gate of the 8 extreme sect would be stepped flat by countless excelling men. Giggle Huoling Long covered her mouth with a smile and glanced at Lu Mu Yen, you, girl, is starting to tease Laonyang. Then her tone changed, I think you should find yourself a flower guardian. Do you have a man you like? How about I help you find one at the sect? Hearing Huoling Long's question, the pupils present turned their attention to Lu Mu Yen to hear her answer. Forget it, many of the men in the sect are too weak. They'll be flattened by a few of my punches, I want a man who can't win me. Lu Mu Yen pouted and joked with dislike. The people present couldn't resist but twitched the corners of their lips when they heard her words, especially the hopes of the several schools who didn't know whether to laugh or cry and had the urge to go up and teach her a good lesson. Where were they weak? She sure could say she could flatten them with a few punches, did she think she was Headmaster Hua? But not long after, when these hopes saw the way she beat people up, they all secretly thanked that they didn't provoke her today, otherwise they would feel extremely sour when thinking of that fist. Headmaster Feng looked at the sky silently, and said earnestly, little girl, you look so beautiful, it's better to be gentle. Men like women who are gentle like water, and don't like tigresses. Headmaster Feng, Laonyang's pupil still needs you to teach. Huoling Long looked at Headmaster Feng grimly, then turned and patted Lu Mu Yen on her shoulder with a smile, don't listen to her, fists are the truth. Hee, ill listen to Headmaster. Lu Mu Yan's eyes narrowed into crescent moons with her smile, looking mischievous. Headmaster Feng and the pupils present were all deeply defeated by the two of them. The women of their sect were more and more beautiful one after another, but all had the tendency of violence. They couldn't afford to be hurt. After the 7-colored glazed cauldron was sold, Old Mu smiled and continued to auction. Let's auction our last finale item this year. Even this old man is very tempted by this item. I believe it will not disappoint all the fellow Taoists here. Old Mu, stop teasing, hurry up and auction. Someone couldn't wait to see what the final item will be. Old Mu walked up to the crystal column that had just risen, pointed to an ice blue bottle above and said, "This bottle contains a drop of blood essence from the descendant of a heavenly phoenix. Because the energy is too violent and powerful, so the senior that obtained this drop of blood essence made this small vial from Frost Soul Ice Crystal." Heavens! That bottle actually contains the blood essence of the descendant of a heavenly phoenix divine beast. Not to mention the blood essence of a heavenly phoenix descendant, even the bottle made from Frost Soul Ice Crystal is worth a fortune. The heavenly phoenix is a true spirit of the ancient times. I heard that it only occasionally appears on Guanling World. I didn't expect that we'll also have the blood essence of the descendant of the heavenly phoenix in the lower interface. Hearing Old Mu's introduction, the people below were basically about to start arguing, shocked but also extremely excited. Meanwhile the sword saints in the private rooms were all eager to act and the heat in their eyes couldn't be curbed. The blood essence of the descendant of a heavenly phoenix, owner, I want it. Bing Ji also couldn't resist but stand on Lu Muyan's shoulder and spit excited words. He was originally the descendant of the Ice One divine beast. If he could refine that drop of blood essence of the descendant of a heavenly phoenix, he believed that the divine beast bloodline inside him would be even purer, and his cultivation base would increase greatly. The people in the private room, including Headmaster Feng and Huoling Long, couldn't resist twitching their lips. Lu Muyan's spirit pet's appetite sure was big. He even wanted her to win the blood essence of the descendant of a heavenly phoenix. Didn't he know how precious that thing was? Yet who knew, just after they scolded Bing Ji for being ignorant, they heard words that made their jaws drop. Sure. It's just a drop of blood essence of the descendant of a heavenly phoenix, they'll just win it for you. Lu Muyan smiled indifferently, but also couldn't help but be excited. The heavenly phoenix's blood essence wasn't only useful to Bing Ji, but was also a must-have for her who cultivated the sorcerer's skill. As long as she refined the heavenly phoenix's blood essence, she could cultivate a very powerful talent in the sorcerer's skill, and after mastering, the strength of her body would be absolutely comparable to that of a true spirit. Lu Muyan's big talk made everyone present think that she didn't know the value of the heavenly phoenix's blood essence, otherwise how would she dare say such mindless words that she wanted to win it for her spirit pet. Lu girl, do you know the value and usefulness of the blood essence of the descendant of a heavenly phoenix? Headmaster Feng looked at her with amusement and asked. Lu Muyan blinked and said, I know a bit, but if my Ice One divine beast refines the drop of blood essence and his cultivation base increases, then it's also worthwhile. How could Headmaster Feng, Huoling Long and the others possibly understand the true spirit heavenly phoenix's blood essences uses as much as she did? But she naturally wouldn't take the initiative to say it. Little girl, this finale product, the blood essence of the descendant of the heavenly phoenix can't be won without tens of millions of spiritual stones. Headmaster Feng couldn't help but remind her to save her from holding too much hope. Meanwhile Huoling Long looked at Lu Muyan meaningfully. She knew that this little girl wouldn't joke about this kind of thing. Since she dared to say she would win it for her spirit pet, then it meant that she had the capital of tens of millions of spiritual stones. I wonder if headmasters also want this blood essence? Lu Muyan asked after pondering. Headmaster Feng smiled shyly and said, this old man doesn't have the financial resources to win this drop of blood essence. Who wouldn't want a spiritual item like this? But they also needed that ability. I'll see if I can win it at my bottom price. If it exceeds what I can afford then I'll just have to miss my opportunity with it. Huoling Long shrugged and said helplessly. Lu Muyan nodded, spoke no more, and lowered her head in contemplation. Mo Yen, if I win this drop of blood essence, how many assassination attempts do you think I'd suffer? Lu Muyan joked telepathically to Mo Yen. Mo Yan's clear black eyes sparkled, no matter what, you have to win this drop of blood essence. I can purify this drop of blood and if there's no accident, I can purify 2 more drops from it. Lu Muyan's eyes lit up. She was definitely going to win this blood essence. She originally wanted to let Bing Ji use it first to help him improve his divine beast bloodline. But now if Mo Yen could purify it, then she could also use it to cultivate her sorcerer's skill talent. If we face a group of sword saints, do you think we could escape? Lu Muyan joked. There shouldn't be a problem escaping. Mo Yen knew that she wasn't afraid and said with a smile, just bid for it, you still have me. Lu Muyan felt warm inwardly. Mo Yen had always been her strong backing. This fellow had never acted after advancing to tier 9. She was actually looking forward to seeing just how strong he was. And if she was wanted, then let it be so. Either way, it wasn't as if she hadn't been chased by high-level immortals in her previous life. I originally wanted to keep a low profile, but who knew that I still can't escape the result of being targeted? She said with a sigh. Mo Yen rolled his eyes at her speechlessly. What trouble hadn't this woman caused? That thing called low profile wasn't suitable for her at all. The ruckus in the large hall continued, then after a while, Old Mu continued to speak slowly. I probably don't need to say more about the powerful effect of this drop of blood essence from the descendant of a heavenly phoenix as everyone already understands. Let's begin the auction now. In the entire auction hall, only those who knew its efficacy had the ability to bid. He naturally wouldn't talk too much. The starting price of the blood essence of the descendant of a heavenly phoenix is 5 million spiritual stones. The minimum increase cannot be less than 100,000. The auction begins now. 6 million. 7 million. 10 million. Soon, the price was increased to 20 million. Right now, numerous stewards in all the major private rooms were constantly being called in, probably as they're eager to exchange spiritual stones. It seems that I have no chance with this drop of blood essence from the descendant of a heavenly phoenix today. Huo Ling Long sighed. Headmaster Feng asked in surprise, "You're giving up before it even reaches the peak price?" "My maximum is 70 million, but my guess is that the price will be above 80 million. Huo Ling Long said while playing with the cup in her hand. "That high?" Headmaster Feng furrowed his brows, then sighed, "But a spiritual item of this level is worth it even if it costs more than 100 million spiritual stones, especially for high-level body cultivators." "Yeah. Well, see who ends up with this drop of blood essence from the descendant of a heavenly phoenix," Huo Ling Long said. Lu Mu Yen pursed her lips. It seemed that she could only sell the millennium-old royal jelly and the obsidian fluorite to win this drop of blood essence. Using the communication talisman in the private room, she called the steward in. "Headmaster Hua, Headmaster Feng, do you want to sell something?" The steward asked the two of them with a smile as soon as he entered the door. The only reason one would summon a steward of the Tianyuan auction right now was to sell things to collect spiritual stones, and only these two had the strength here. Headmaster Feng was stunned for a while. He didn't want to sell anything. So he looked at Huo Ling Long. Huo Ling Long had already guessed that Lu Mu Yen activated the communication talisman on the seat, so she pointed to Lu Mu Yen and said, "She has something to sell." The steward's expression appeared strange, but still asked with a smile, "What does young miss want to sell?" With a thought, a jar made of frost marrow and 2 ice blue crystals with black water droplets in the center appeared in front of Lu Mu Yen. "I want to auction these 2 things. It'll trouble the steward to ask an appraiser to come and have a look." The steward replied with a smile, "This old man isn't talented, but is indeed a high-level appraiser of the Tianyuan Chamber of Commerce. Young miss can rest assured." "Sure, then please take a look at how many spiritual stones I can sell for these 2 things." Lu Mu Yen said lightly. "Yes. Please wait a moment, young miss." Originally, when the steward saw that the person who wanted to auction things was just a little sword sovereign cultivation-based little girl, he didn't pay much attention, but he also wouldn't not give the 8 extreme sect and the headmasters no face. He stretched out his hand to open the jar first, then a refreshing sweet fragrance wafted out of the jar. With only just a scent, it made him feel exceptionally comfortable and calm. "This is millennium-old royal jelly of the Scarlet Bee?" The steward exclaimed in surprise. "What's so shocking?" Huo Ling Long furrowed her brows and glanced at the steward, but she was also extremely shocked. This little girl sure hid so deeply. She originally thought that century-old royal jelly was already exceptional, but who would have thought she still had millennium-old royal jelly? The millennium-old royal jelly was exceptionally hard to find. It was a heaven-rank spiritual item and had a price but was nowhere to be found on the market. This jar alone could probably be auctioned off for a lot of spiritual stones. The steward and Headmaster Feng twitched the corners of their lips uniformly. What did she mean? What's so shocking? They were completely frightened by it, all right? A little fellow with a sword sovereign cultivation base took out a jar of millennium-old royal jelly. How was this not shocking? The value of this millennium-old royal jelly is very high. How about I take a look at the other thing then discuss the price with young miss? Please. Lu Mu Yen nodded. The steward carefully put down the jar of royal jelly and picked up the ice blue spar to check it. After a moment, the shock in his eyes couldn't be expressed with words. This is a heaven-rank water attribute spiritual item. After a pause, he asked solemnly, "And I ask if these 2 water attribute heaven-rank spiritual items belong to young miss, or are you selling on behalf of others?" Inwardly, he didn't believe that this little girl could take out such a level of spiritual item, and firmly believed there was someone behind her. "These 2 obsidian fluorite were given to me by my master." Lu Mu Yen replied with a smile. Who expected that she had just accepted a master and already had to take him out as a pretense, but only through this way could she explain why she had such level spiritual items. Maybe it could save a lot of trouble. "Young miss master is?" The steward asked, testing. Lu Mu Yen was composed and calmly spit out 4 words, "Old man Tian Xian." But these 4 words alone made the steward and the 2 headmasters' expressions change, each revealing a look of having been dumbfounded. The other pupils in the private room didn't know who old man Tian Xian was, but seeing the shocked expressions of the 2 headmasters and the steward, they could guess that this person was absolutely extraordinary. So it turns out that young miss is the disciple of old man Tian Xian. Excuse my disrespect, excuse my disrespect. The steward's attitude carried a little curry favor with. Who was old man Tian Xian but the top powerhouse on the continent who had made a name himself a century ago? On Tianling continent, the person who used to shock the entire world had rarely appeared in the past century, but the steward had still heard of his deeds. Steward is too polite. Then how many spiritual stones can I sell these 2 spiritual items for? Lu Mu Yen said with a calm smile, making her identity even more mysterious. The steward pondered for a moment then said, "Young miss, the value of these 2 spiritual stones is too great, and I can't decide with my authority. Please wait a moment, young miss, as I need to report it to above." "All right. Do you want both of these spiritual items?" Lu Mu Yen paused, then said, "If you decide to buy them, then I'll start bidding for the blood essence of the descendant of a heavenly phoenix." Yes, we naturally want these kinds of spiritual items in Tianyuan City. The steward patted his chest and assured, young miss, feel free to bid, your 2 spiritual items value is estimated to be around 90 million spiritual stones. It shouldn't be a problem to win the blood essence of the descendant of a heavenly phoenix. What a joke, their Tianyuan City couldn't afford to offend a disciple of old man Tian Xian. He didn't doubt Lu Mu Yan's words. The 2 headmasters here were from the 8 Extreme sect, and old man Tian Xian was the ancestor of the 8 Extreme sect. It was impossible for her to lie in public, otherwise there was only a dead end for her after returning. Moreover, the millennium-old royal jelly and the water attribute heaven-rank spiritual item weren't something that a little girl with a sword sovereign cultivation base could take out. If she was that one's disciple, then it would be reasonable. Then I will trouble steward to take care of things. Lu Mu Yan said with a slight smile. After the steward left the private room, Huo Ling Long's gaze was a little complicated but also excited, and she couldn't help but ask, little girl, is what you said just now true? This is the token that master gave me. Lu Mu Yan took out a cyan token engraved with simplistic and old patterns and handed it to Huo Ling Long. Huo Ling Long carefully took the token and scrutinized it with Headmaster Feng, then handed it back to her. Take care of this thing. It is your blessing to be able to be a disciple under Ancestor's door. Although her grandmother was also a sword deity, but she was much inferior to old man Tian Xian. That one had a cultivation base closest to ascending to Guangling world. Pupil understands. Lu Mu Yan put away the token. She had some trust in Huo Ling Long, but she didn't trust Headmaster Feng. After all, if the blood essence of the descendant of a heavenly phoenix was won by her, it was very useful to sword saint-level sword masters. If the 2 of them knew that she was old man Tian Xian's disciple, they not only wouldn't be greedy, but they would instead protect her. This was the difference between having a background and having no background. I was just saying that Lu girl was very talented, but I didn't expect you to be accepted by Ancestor as a disciple. This is truly blue is made out of indigo but is more vivid than indigo. Headmaster Feng curbed the feelings of shock in his heart, and his attitude towards Lu Mu Yan was more polite. No wonder this girl could represent the sect to participate in the 6 competition, so she was old man Tian Xian's disciple. When this news is announced, her identity would be even more noble than that of Bai Fei Yao. Master asked me to participate in the competitions between the 6 major sects as a test. The matter of accepting me as disciple has yet to spread, so I hope that headmasters and the several senior brothers and senior sisters wouldn't publicize it for the time being. Lu Mu Yan said cautiously. Headmaster Feng smiled lovingly and said, that's only natural. Natural. Then he immediately swept over all the pupils in the private room with a sharp gaze and warned, you are all not allowed to reveal even part of what happened in this private room today. Pupil obeys. The pupils replied respectfully, all pressured by his sharp gaze. They also derived some information from their conversation. That is, the junior sister who they had always looked down upon was actually the disciple of an ancestor of the sect, and her identity wasn't something they could compare to. Many Hope pupils had exceptionally complex feelings. They sure wanted to see how this junior sister with a deep background would radiate her brilliance during the grand competition of the 6 major sects. If she couldn't even obtain a ranking, then that would be fun. But they also put away the thoughts of going against her. She overwhelmed them simply in terms of identity. Many thanks to headmasters. Lu Mu Yan appeared grateful. The price is already 50 million. Are you going to chase? Huo Ling Long asked Lu Mu Yan with smile, but not quite a smile. Lu Mu Yan played with the 2 obsidian fluorites in her hand, raised her eyes, then said, no hurry, I'll wait until 70 million before bidding. How about I bid for you? Huo Ling Long thought about it, then asked. Lu Mu Yan smiled knowingly, sure, I'll trouble headmaster. Her heart warmed. Huo Ling Long was probably afraid that she would be targeted after bidding. However, since the other party had this kind of intention, then she naturally wouldn't reject it. It was better to cause less trouble before the competitions of the 6 major sects. When the price broke through 70 million, the number of bidders on the scene gradually decreased, and in the end, only 2 people competed. 75 million. Huo Ling Long's lazy voice sounded. Among the 2 people who bid, there was a headmaster of the vast mountain sect, and his heart fell when he heard Huo Ling Long suddenly come out to disrupt the situation. 80 million. He gritted his teeth and bid. A hoarse voice came from another private room, 81 million. 85 million. Huo Ling Long bid according to the price Lu Mu Yan said. Huo Ling Long, don't go too far. The headmaster of the vast mountain sect couldn't resist but say with a bit of anger when he heard the price. Every time, this demonist just couldn't get along with their vast mountain sect. Forgetting about before, but today, the blood essence of the descendant of a heavenly phoenix was very important to him. How's Laonyang going too far? You damned old man, it's truly a dog can't spit out ivory. Huo Ling Long sneered, then turned to Old Mu and asked, Old Mu, am I too much just by bidding? Old Mu was stunned for a while. Who knew that this demonist would drag him in, but he was very happy that Huo Ling Long came to disrupt the situation. Headmaster Huo bidding isn't too much and Headmaster Li shouldn't interfere. Old Mu looked at vast mountain sect's private room with a bit of warning. Humph. 90 million. Headmaster Li of the vast mountain sect shouted his bottom price through gritted teeth. 91 million. Huo Ling Long continued. Headmaster Li almost spat out a mouthful of blood. He said grimly, Huo Ling Long, you're vicious. Whether Laonyang is vicious or not, is it up to you? Huo Ling Long sneered. 95 million. The hoarse voice continued. Huo Linglong furrowed her brows, then looked at Lu Muyen. Seeing her nod, she continued, 96 million. After the price was called, the hoarse voice didn't sound again. With a smile, Old Mu routinely asked once, then announced, the blood essence of the descendant of a heavenly phoenix is on by Headmaster Hua with the price of 96 million low-quality spiritual stones. Many sword saints present were exceptionally angry and secretly scolded that demoness Huo Linglong countless times, but couldn't do anything about her. Whether it was combat power or background, Huo Linglong was one of the leaders among the sword saint level powerhouses. Old Mu then said a few words and announced the end of the auction. Lu girl, although it was the price I bid just now, but it's not unlikely that someone would use other means to find out that the real buyer is you, so you should mentally prepare yourself. Huo Linglong sighed and reminded. This girl was exceptionally talented, but it wasn't a good thing to be so brilliant right now. Lu Muyen also understood that it was impossible to maintain complete secrecy in a place like Tianyuan City where there was a mix of fish and dragons. Thank you, Headmaster, for the reminder. I'm mentally prepared. Although she could use the banner that was her master as a guise to deter some people, but it was impossible for everyone to fear old man Tian Xian. After all, it was a century ago when his prestige was established. No matter what, the most important thing was to rely on herself. Strength was key. After the auction, the steward returned to their private room. Young Miss Lu, our Tianyuan City offers 100 million low-quality spiritual stones for your 2 heaven-rank spiritual items. What do you think? The steward asked with a smile. Lu Muyen nodded with a smile, I'm very satisfied. Then he'll trouble steward to deal with it. Young Miss Lu is too polite. The steward handed the Frost Soul Ice crystal bottle that contained the blood essence of the descendant of a heavenly phoenix to Lu Muyen and said, Young Miss Lu, this is the blood essence of the descendant of a heavenly phoenix that you just won, please take a look. Lu Muyen took the bottle and opened it. Suddenly, a fiery aura emanated from the bottle and the entire private room was overflowing with a violent force and a powerful pressure. It's indeed the blood essence of the descendant of a heavenly phoenix. Lu Muyen's expression remained indifferent, and she pushed the 2 spiritual items over. Steward, just deduct the auction price and give me the rest. The moment the blood essence of the descendant of a heavenly phoenix overflowed, only Huo Linglong, Headmaster Feng and Lu Muyen appeared to be unaffected, while the faces of other pupils who were slightly weaker paled and their breathing grew tougher. The steward was overwhelmed by the aura of the heavenly phoenix bloodline that suddenly radiated from the bottle just now and also felt a little hard for air. But he didn't expect Lu Muyen, a little girl with only sword sovereign strength, to be able to maintain her composure. No wonder she was able to become old man Tian Xian's disciple. Seemed that she was indeed extraordinary. This is the remaining spiritual stones for young Miss Lu after deducting the auction price. The steward adjusted his slight change of expression just now and said with a smile. Lu Muyen took the bag containing the spiritual stones and swept it with her mental energy. She found that the remaining spiritual stones were all replaced by middle-quality spiritual stones by Tianyuan City. Was this used to show goodwill to her? Thank you, steward. Our young lord specially explained that young Miss Lu can come to Tianyuan City as a guest if you have nothing to do in the future. Then the steward took out a piece of ancient black jade and handed it to Lu Muyen. This is the distinguished guest token of Tianyuan City, please take it young Miss Lu. Lu Muyen took the ancient black jade in confusion, and many questions crossed her mind. Then I trouble steward to thank your young lord for me. Lu Muyen didn't know any young lord of Tianyuan City, so she could only guess that the other party might have given her such an honor because she was old man Tian Xian's disciple. The steward and Lu Muyen exchanged a few more pleasantries before exiting the private room. The city lord's mansion of Tianyuan City. A tall and upright man stood by the window against the wind, who knows thinking about what. Young lord, young Miss Lu has accepted the token you presented. The steward entered the room after receiving permission and reported respectfully. Did she ask anything? The man said slowly after a while. No. Although young Miss Lu is not yet 20, but she is very sophisticated. She may have questions inwardly, but she revealed nothing. The steward replied. The man chuckled, she's intelligent and witty and is probably also guarding against Tianyuan City. The steward was stunned for a moment. Why did he feel like the way young lord spoke felt as if he was very familiar with Lu Muyen? You can leave. The man ordered. Yes. After the steward exited the room, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared behind the man. Young lord, your feelings for that girl are too deep. The middle-aged man's voice was gentle like a spring breeze, but there was no warmth at all. This was also a test and a reminder. What? Can't I? The person known as young lord asked with a sneer. The middle-aged man sighed helplessly, the city lord will not allow you to take Lu Muyen as your wife. The middle-aged man continued, the city lord has always wanted you to marry young Miss Gu. Whoever I want to marry is my freedom, even my maternal grandfather has no right to interfere. The young man's voice was solemn, what does the so-called arranged marriage from 20 years before have anything to do with me? I want marry that woman. If city lord knew that you have a deep affection for that Lu girl, I'm afraid the middle-aged man paused and didn't finish. Are you worried that maternal grandfather will kill Muyen? The young man asked with a sigh. It's not impossible if it means for you to give up. The man replied. Wen Liang, then will you go and tell maternal grandfather my thoughts? The middle-aged man was stunned for a moment, then assured him faithfully, no. I am young Lattice One. After the young lady left, young lord is my master. I will never betray young lord. Very well, remember what you said today. Yes. Lu Muyen couldn't guess the purpose of the mysterious young lord of Tianyuan City. She didn't want to interact with the people of Tianyuan City much. For some reason, Tianyuan City just gave her a bad feeling. After the transaction was over, Lu Muyen followed Wu Linglong and the others back to the 8 Extreme Sex carriage. Halfway along, there was a very small noise in the distance. Lu Muyen, who originally had her eyes closed and was resting, suddenly opened her eyes, raised her head, and said to Wu Linglong, "Headmaster, I have something to do. I'll go back myself later. The auction only just finished, it's too dangerous for you to go out alone." Wu Linglong furrowed her brows slightly. Lu Muyen said in a firm tone, "Don't worry, Headmaster, I still have the ability to protect myself. Go. Be careful." Wu Linglong pondered, then nodded. Lu Muyen was very fast, and it was too late for Headmaster Feng to stop her. Wu Linglong, Lu Muyen's current identity isn't what it used to be. If something goes wrong, we won't be able to bear it. Headmaster Feng said with a sigh. Wu Linglong glanced at him lightly. Little girl has always known her limits. She must have something urgent to be in such a hurry. But tonight is the most restless night of Tianyuan City. What if she's affected? Headmaster Feng asked. After each Tianyuan auction, there would be many secret battles between various forces, and Tianyuan City wouldn't interfere. It could even be said that they indulge it. Do you think that if she didn't even have the ability to protect herself, Ancestor Tian Xian would accept her as a disciple? Wu Linglong raised an eyebrow and retorted. Headmaster Feng thought that it did make sense. Lu Muyen wanted to go out herself, not to mention that she had a Tier 9 spirit pet, so self-protection shouldn't be a problem. Alright then. Lu Muyen headed quickly towards an alley after getting off the carriage, towards the area where there was a faint disturbance. Lu Muting, don't refuse a toast and accept a forfeit, hand over the corpse of the Tier 8 demonic beast, otherwise don't blame us for being rude. In the alley, more than a dozen people of Sword Sovereign and Sword Monarch cultivation bases surrounded 5 people whose figures couldn't be seen clearly and their voices threatened fiercely. The alley where they were located was a dark alley, which was one area of 3 that was openly disregarded by Tianyuan City. Private fights weren't allowed in the city, but dark alleys could be used to settle personal grievances. That's why these more than a dozen people dared to rob so blatantly. 1 inch. This case young lady refers to this young lord's mother. The dozen or so people surrounded the 5 with an arrogant attitude. Cough cough, a young man's voice sounded. Your tiger wolf mercenary is so despicable, you even used drugs on us. From the man's coughing, one could tell that he was severely injured. Huh, as long as there's money to earn, what's the matter with being despicable? The leading Sword Sovereign large man laughed. He looked at the beautiful woman beside Lu Muting and said, "We want your woman too. If you understand, then hand over that Tier 8 demonic beast, then we can leave you a whole corpse." You're dreaming. Lu Muting roared angrily, swinging his sword, wanting to slash at the large man. It was only a pity that not only was he drugged but was also seriously injured by a sneak attack. This strike wasn't even released when he felt as if the elemental energy of his entire body couldn't be mobilized at all. Do you feel powerless right now? You deserve death. His companions were all poisoned and on the ground right now. The big man swept his gaze over the panic-stricken woman behind Lu Muting, licked his dry lips and ordered his subordinates, "Go seize Lu Muting and bring him over. Yan Cheng, if you dare to touch a single hair on her today, it'll definitely slice you up into thousands of pieces." Lu Muting closed his eyes. He attempted to unravel the power that was sealed in his dantian little by little. Huh, you still dare to threaten Laozi right now? He felt a dangerous aura from Lu Muting right now. Although Lu Muting was now a lamb that he could slaughter at any moment, he couldn't truly give the other party a chance to take revenge. The large man's eyes sharpened, and with his hands as claws, elemental energy spread all over his left hand, and he suddenly grabbed towards Lu Muting's dantian. Pang! Suddenly, a light wind blew past and the large man with the Sword Sovereign cultivation base flew upside down and smashed heavily onto the wall. Who do you want to turn into trash? The people in the dark alley all looked towards the entrance and saw a stunning woman in a red dress walking out of the shadows. Lu Muting's eyes filled with joy when he saw the person coming. "Big brother, don't worry, it's just a few stinky cockroaches." Lu Muyen was furious when she saw Lu Muting clutching his chest. As what did you do to us? The leader looked at Lu Muyen in horror, his voice hoarse, and his entire body felt as if there were countless ants crawling around. Lu Muyen gave him a disdainful look and said coldly, letting you all experience the feeling of dying slowly after being poisoned. The large man wanted to continue to say something, but it felt as if someone was chalking his neck and he could no longer make any sound. Lu Muyen was too lazy to look at them again, so she turned around and took out a grade 4 spirit cleansing pill for Lu Muting to consume. "Big brother, are you alright?" She supported Lu Muting and took his pulse and found that there was a force running around chaotically in his dantian right now. She immediately channeled green spiritual energy in to suppress the force. Lu Muting felt a lot more comfortable after taking Lu Muyen's pill. After discovering the elemental energy inside could now be mobilized, he pointed to the 4 people on the ground and said, "You should detoxify them first." Lu Muyen nodded, walked over, and fed a spirit cleansing pill to each of them. "This isn't a place to talk." Lu Muting looked worriedly at the 4 who still hadn't recovered and said. Lu Muyen instructed to Bing Ji on her shoulder, "Carry them and follow." Bing Ji turned into an elegant scholar-like man and nodded, "Yes, owner." Lu Muyen grabbed Lu Muting and disappeared into the dark alley in a flash. Not long after they left, a group of people dressed in clothes similar to the large man and the others walked into the dark alley. When they saw the large man and the others lying on the ground with a purple face and had lost their lives, they were all startled. Go and take a look. The gentle-looking man in the lead said to the person next to him with a grim expression. Yes, leader. The man carefully walked over to the large man and the others, took a deep breath, then checked them and said, they all died of poisoning. How long has it been since they were poisoned? Not quite an incense stick of time. The person replied. The feminine man narrowed his eyes and said, do you know what the poison is? Or who killed them? The physician checked the corpses of the more than a dozen people on the ground again and said solemnly, the other party's method of poisoning is very clever and ruthless. I can't tell what the poison is, and I also can't judge how they were poisoned. Even you can't figure it out? The feminine man's expression sank, and he turned to another person and asked, who were they chasing before? They were chasing Mu Feng mercenary, but those people had already been poisoned by Yan Cheng earlier, so it should be someone else who killed them. Chase. They couldn't have run far. Yes. Lu Mu Yen didn't take Lu Mu Ting and the others to the yard where the 8 extreme sect were, but found a quiet and remote inn to stay in. She helped Lu Mu Ting onto an armchair in the room, and Bing Ji also brought the other 4 into the room. The 4 also regained their strength to speak and walk right now. The only woman among them walked up to Lu Mu Ting and asked anxiously, Mu Ting, are you alright? Lu Mu Yen raised her head and looked at the woman who was speaking. She was dressed in white and had an above-average appearance, pure and gentle. Lu Mu Ting looked at the woman softly and said, Luo Yin, I'm fine, how about you? The woman bit her lip, her eyes filled with mist and the smile she wore was guilt-ridden, I'm fine. Lu Mu Ting appeared to be relieved, then a sunny and warm smile appeared on his handsome face, looking at Lu Mu Yen as he introduced to the woman, this is my little sister, Lu Mu Yen. Lu Mu Ting then introduced the woman in front of him to Lu Mu Yen. Her name is by Luo Yin, the woman I like. Lu Mu Ting's straightforward introduction made by Luo Yin's pale face dye with a slight pink. She looked at Lu Mu Yen with a friendly smile, hello. Hello. Lu Mu Yen smiled back lightly. She could see that the woman in front of her was not only gentle, but also passive. She didn't hate it, but didn't like it much either. But this didn't matter. As long as her elder brother liked her, then that's all that matters. Yenner, can you take a look at their injuries? Lu Mu Ting said. Lu Mu Yen nodded, took the pulses of the 4 of them, then took out 4 more pills for them to take. Aside from Bai Luo Yin, there were also 3 young men among the 4. Their injuries were no better than Lu Mu Ting's. After taking the pill, they found that their injuries had recovered a lot. Bing Ji, take them down to rest and recover from their injuries. Lu Mu Yen instructed Bing Ji. From the conversation just now, the 3 of them also knew the relationship between the 2 siblings, thanked Lu Mu Yen, and left the room with Bing Ji. Young Miss Bai, you can also return to your room to rest. Lu Mu Yen said with a smile, looking at Bai Luo Yin. Bai Luo Yin's eyes were red like a frightened rabbit. She sucked in a deep breath and nodded firmly, all right. Then I will trouble you to take care of Mu Ting. Then she looked at Lu Mu Ting and said, Mu Ting, I'll go back to my room first to rest. See you tomorrow. Rest well. Lu Mu Ting gave her a gentle, reassuring gaze. There was sweetness in Bai Luo Yin's eyes, and she turned and left the room. Lu Mu Yen paid for the entire courtyard, so they could choose any room they wanted. When there were only 2 people left in the room, Lu Mu Yen helped Lu Mu Ting remove the poisons in his body completely, then used a void talisman to repair the seal on his dantian. Big brother, your physique is special, so try not to use the power sealed as much as possible. Lu Mu Yen said with a sigh. Lu Mu Ting had the rare slaughterer constitution. Since childhood, he would automatically absorb slaughter energy because of his physique. Later, it was sealed by a wandering expert, but if he often used the power in the seal, then he could lose his mind. She checked it just now and the seal had been undone at least 3 times. It seemed that he had encountered a lot of danger. No worries, I feel like I can control part of the power in the seal. Lu Mu Ting scratched her nose with his finger affectionately and asked, why are you in Tianyuan City? Are you here to participate in the grand competition between the 6 major sects? After participating in the Tianyuan auction, I felt a little uneasy. Luckily while I was returning, I found you. If she arrived at Lu Mu Ting a step later, he would definitely use the power in the seal again. Lu Mu Ting sighed and said, we accidentally got tricked and poisoned, and were attacked when we passed the dark alley. I didn't expect them, as the ninth largest mercenary group on Tianling continent, to do something this shameless. Big brother, this shows that you don't have enough experience. Lu Mu Yen was still a little scared when she thought of that scene at the time. If she hadn't arrived, and if Lu Mu Ting's didn't unseal the power in time, then his dantian would have been completely destroyed. The poisoning this time was also caused by the presence of spies in our mercenary group. I really haven't experienced enough. Lu Mu Ting's eyes were cold. If that person hadn't been poisoned to death by Lu Mu Yen just now together with the rest, he definitely wouldn't forgive him. Then he continued worriedly, our Mu Feng mercenary originally had 13 people. I wonder how the other 8 people are. It's useless to think too much. You'll find out when your injuries are healed and go look for them. Lu Mu Yen comforted. True. They're not weak, they should be alright. Lu Mu Yen sat beside him, leaned her chin on her hand and said, Big brother, tell me about your experience in the past year or so. Sure. Lu Mu Ting saw that his little sister's eyes were filled with concern, and he felt warm in his heart, then slowly told Lu Mu Yen about how he set up a mercenary group and went on adventures. You built the Mu Feng mercenary with a man named Qin Feng, do you know him well? Lu Mu Yen asked after listening. Lu Mu Ting knew her concerns and gave her a reassuring smile, don't worry, Qin Feng is a close friend who I depend on in life and death situation. Then that's good. Lu Mu Yen nodded. As for whether he was a close friend in life and death, she believed that her big brother still had the ability to figure that out. Yenner. Lu Mu Ting called out dotingly. Lu Mu Yen raised her eyes, What do you think about Luo Yin? Lu Muting asked tentatively. He liked Bai Luo Yin and naturally hoped to get the support or approval from his little sister. How I think about Bai Luo Yin doesn't matter. Lu Mu Yen brewed a cup of honey tea for Lu Muting and continued, as long as you really like her and she's sincere to you, then I'll support you. As long as you don't hate her, then that's fine. Lu Muting realized that her little sister wasn't very enthusiastic about Bai Luo Yin earlier, and he was worried that she didn't like Bai Luo Yin. Lu Mu Yen had an indescribable feeling towards Bai Luo Yin. Either way, she just couldn't like her. She didn't want to talk more about Bai Luo Yin, so she took out an interspatial ring and handed it to Lu Muting, saying, Big brother, there are 20 million spiritual stones in here. You can take them to arm your mercenary group. There's also a defensive magic tool and some pills in there that are useful to you. She gave Lu Muting the saint treasure that was given to her by ancestor Yuchan. Lu Muting wasn't going to argue and be polite to Lu Mu Yen either. He knew his little sister's temperament. If he didn't accept it, she would definitely be angry. Where did you get so many spiritual stones? He asked in surprise after putting away the interspatial ring. Lu Mu Yen roughly explained to him her experiences in the past year. So that's how it is. My little sister is amazing as always. Lu Muting smiled dotingly. Among the three siblings, right now, little sister had actually become their main pillar. Big brother, why did you provoke the Nineth largest tiger wolf mercenary? We killed a tier 8 demonic beast in a nearby mountain range and it happened to be discovered by the tiger wolf mercenary. They wanted to swallow our achievements, so that's how the scene of where we were besieged and chased after occurred. The siblings chatted for a bit, then Lu Mu Yen suddenly got up and said, Big brother, rest well. I'll go back to the sect station in Tianyuan City first. You want stay here tonight? Lu Muting asked in surprise. No, I'll see you again tomorrow. She said with a smile, I left the group without true permission earlier, I might not be able to explain if I don't return tonight. Then go quickie and be careful on your way. Lu Muting said reluctantly. Lu Mu Yen nodded and left the room quickly. The smile on her face vanished as soon as she left. She looked coldly in one direction and quickly set up a defensive array in the courtyard. Then she used flash steps and left the inn, and the two strong auras behind indeed followed her out. She sneered inwardly. Who knew that Sword Saint level sword masters would be targeting her so fast? Lu Mu Yen flew the entire way and finally landed in a dark alley, hugging her hands as she leaned against the wall. After following for so long, you're still not going to come out? Her ethereal and sarcastic voice drifted in the alley with the night wind. As soon as her voice fell, two people walked out from both ends of the alley, one with white hair and the other with black hair, both with a very similar appearance. Knowing that we followed, and yet you still dared to come to a dark alley. I don't know if you're too bold or you're so eager to find death. The white-haired elderly man walked over and said with a sneer, Let's hear why you followed me. Lu Mu Yen looked up lightly and asked. The black-haired elderly man opened his mouth and said, Hand over the wind attribute comprehension stone you won and all the belongings on you. If we're in a good mood, we can spare you from dying. So it turned out to be for the wind attribute comprehension stone. Lu Mu Yen raised an eyebrow and smiled as she said, You are two strong sword saints, that comprehension stone should be of little use to the both of you, right? Is it worth coming to rob me, a junior? She also wondered why the two sword saints would come rob her for the comprehension stone, so she tested suspiciously. We have our own reasons for snatching that comprehension stone. No matter how much nonsense you use to delay time, it's useless. The white-haired elderly man snorted coldly. After he finished speaking, the white-haired elderly man took out a long sword, gathered all his elemental energy and struck out a wind blade. Lu Mu Yen reached out and poked Mo Yen on the shoulder. I'll hand them to you. Mo Yen glanced at Lu Mu Yen lightly, then transformed into a white light and dashed out. He didn't even bother to grow bigger. A cluster of cyan nether flames emerged from the center of his brows and the sword aura vanished in an instant. The two of them were completely shocked and immediately attacked Mo Yen with their magic tool. The cluster of cyan flames turned into a cloud of cyan mist. The two magic tools were covered by the green mist and soon lost connection with the two of them. Since the two of them could cultivate until Sword Saint, they weren't fools either. They exchanged a look, then shouted, Run. Mo Yen's dark and bright eyes were filled with ridicule. With a wave of his paw, two dark paw prints flew out and hit the back of the two instantly. At this moment, the cyan mist turned into a cage and tightly trapped the two of them within it. Shue Shue, come out to eat. Shue Shue, who was transformed into a bracelet around Lu Mu Yan's wrist, was extremely excited and a golden light burst into the cyan mist. After a while, when the cyan mist dissipated, the two sword saints had already turned into mummified corpses without even being able to utter a scream. Lu Mu Yen beckoned with her hand and two interspatial rings fell into her hands. The legendary black-white twin killer is only this much, but they're worth quite a bit of money. No wonder they're on the most wanted list of Tianyuan City. The strength of these two initial phase sword saints isn't very good, but their skills are relatively sinister. After joining forces, they can even kill middle phase sword saints. If they didn't meet us, they wouldn't have capsized in the gutter either. Mo Yen replied. He walked beside one of them, grabbed a spirit beast ring with his claws and tossed it to Lu Mu Yen. What's this? Lu Mu Yen probed her mental energy into the spirit beast ring, releasing a demonic beast inside with curiosity, then looked at Mo Yen and joked, Mo Yen, this is your brother? In her hand was a pure white demonic beast with a tuft of flaming red fluff on its forehead, very similar to Mo Yen. Mo Yen rolled his eyes at her and didn't pay attention. Such a lowly fire cloud mink race demonic beast could also be his brother. You're so boring. Lu Mu Yen pouted. Mo Yan's temper was too cold and there weren't many things that could interest him. This fire cloud mink is a mutated species. Its sense of smell has evolved, so it should have discovered the wind essence in the wind attribute comprehension stone. Mo Yen said lightly. Lu Mu Yen realized now, no wonder those two came to kill me. So it turned out that they discovered the wind essence inside. She looked at the fire cloud mink and said in surprise, "This demonic beast hasn't been contracted by the two of them." Then she discovered that the fire cloud mink's eyes were jaded, and it didn't have the aura of a tier 7 demonic beast at all. They should have used some kind of secret skill to forcibly enslave the fire cloud mink. Take a look to see if there's any seal in its body. Mo Yen said. Lu Mu Yen probed into the fire cloud mink's yaofu with a sliver of green mist and discovered that there was indeed a layer of a seal on top of its crystal core. She thought about it, then used her mental energy and spiritual energy to peel off the seal little by little. When the seal was completely released, the fire cloud mink screamed in pain, then the jadedness in its eyes gradually disappeared and was replaced by clarity. "Thank you." The fire cloud mink spoke the human language after a while. Lu Mu Yen looked down at it. "I didn't save you for nothing. Just tell me what your purpose is." Maybe because the fire cloud mink had experienced being controlled as a puppet, it was very indifferent. "You sure understand?" Lu Mu Yen was quite satisfied with this fire cloud mink. "Be my big brother's spirit pet, but you'll get enough freedom, and you won't be enslaved anymore." Lu Mu Ting had established a mercenary party to venture around. With a mutated fire cloud mink, it was great use for looking for spiritual herbs and spiritual items. Following him may be better than going back to your forest to cultivate. Mo Yen looked at the fire cloud mink and said. Lu Mu Ting's physique was special. If he really was able to control the power of slaughtering, then his future achievements wouldn't be too low, not to mention that he had Lu Mu Yen, this little sister, as his backing. The fire cloud mink's body couldn't resist trembling. He knew that the demonic beast similar to himself wasn't a fire cloud mink at all, and the royal clan's pressure that was inadvertently exuded made him want to tremble and surrender. "All right," he replied without much hesitation. Not long after bearing wisdom after tier 5, he was caught by these two people and were often forcibly made to drink various types of drugs. Once, he almost died from the bursting of meridians. After surviving, his cultivation speed not only increased a lot, but he also began to mutate. But after advancing to tier 7, he was controlled by the two with drugs and they also sealed his crystal core in his yaofu, turning him into a puppet that couldn't think for himself. He never wanted to experience those days again. Having stayed with humans for so long, he didn't feel right to suddenly return to the deep mountains to cultivate either, so it may be a better choice to choose a different owner. That night, Lu Mu Yen brought the fire cloud mink back to the 8 extreme sects residence, and when the two headmasters heard her return, they were also relieved. The next day, Headmaster Feng had them stay at Tianyuan City for the last day. If they wanted to buy anything or just to stroll around, they should hurry up, then they would set for Heavenly Secret Palace. Lu Mu Yen went to the inn she had booked all for herself. When she arrived at the inn, Lu Mu Ting and the others had practically recovered and they were sitting together, eating porridge and chatting. Seeing Lu Mu Yen arrive, Lu Mu Ting's eyes lit up and he stood up happily. "Little sister." "Brother." Lu Mu Yen was pulled by Lu Mu Ting and sat beside him. Seeing that his complexion had improved a lot, she smiled and said, "It seems that your Botus almost recovered. Isn't it thanks to the pills from you, little girl?" Lu Mu Ting said dotingly. Lu Mu Yen rolled her eyes at him in amusement. "You make it sound as if you're that much older. You're only born 2 hours before me. I'm still your big brother even if it's only 2 hours. Lu Mu Ting raised his chin arrogantly. Seeing the two faces that were almost 80 to 90% similar, one firm and one gentle, the several people present all had various thoughts. The three men were a little envious when they saw that the siblings had such a good relationship and wished that they also had such a beautiful, wise, and powerful little sister. Bai Luo Yin's hands in her sleeves tightened slightly while looking at Lu Mu Yen gently and asked, "Does young Miss Lu want some porridge?" Hearing Bai Luo Yin's words, Lu Mu Yen turned her gaze to her and after a while, she said with a smile that wasn't quite a smile, "So it turns out that young Miss Bai can cook spiritual porridge." The porridge on the table exuded a light medicinal fragrance, which was obviously boiled with a lot of spiritual herbs that nourished the body. "I'm not that skilled, so I hope young Miss Lu doesn't dislike it." Bai Luo Yin shyly handed a bowl of porridge to Lu Mu Yen. Lu Mu Yen took the porridge, ate a spoonful, then said with a light smile, "Young Miss Bai is too modest, this porridge tastes good. My little skill isn't enough in front of young Miss Lu, an alchemist." Bai Luo Yin smiled with embarrassment. Lu Mu Yen raised an eyebrow. "Who said I was an alchemist?" She looked at Bai Luo Yin, but her peripheral vision glossed by Lu Mu Ting. Seeing the surprise on his expression, she felt relieved. It seemed that Big Brother didn't tell this woman that she was an alchemist. Even if Big Brother liked Bai Luo Yin, but he still wouldn't reveal their family's secrets. "No?" Bai Luo Yin's face was filled with surprise at just the right time, and her face was dyed with a light pink, as if she was very apologetic. "Too saw young Miss Lu take out so many grade 4 pills yesterday to heal us, so I thought you were an alchemist." Her words didn't arouse any suspicion from the others. After all, the other three people also almost thought she was an alchemist after seeing Lu Mu Yen take out so many pills for them yesterday. "Does young Miss Bai know any alchemy?" Lu Mu Yen didn't answer her, but asked with a smile. "I learned things related to spiritual medicine from my mother, but I want no alchemy." Bai Luo Yin replied. "Young Miss Bai's mother is an alchemist?" Lu Mu Yen continued to ask. "No, mother is only a physician." Bai Luo Yin's expression revealed some regret. "Yenner, Luo Yin is the physician of our mercenary party." Lu Mu Ting had a strange feeling in his heart, so he added. Lu Mu Yen nodded with a smile, "So that's how it is. No wonder young Miss Bai has a medicinal fragrance on her. Yenner, we haven't practiced swords together for a long time. How about we spar a bit today? Lu Muting smiled brightly. Hearing his words, Bai Luo Yin sighed with relief. This younger sister of Lu Muting's is too difficult to deal with. Lu Muyen looked up at Lu Muting and huffed coldly, not interested. Did her big brother not want her to keep staring at Bai Luo Yin and ask questions? This stupid big brother probably didn't realize the secret testing between them just now. Lu Muting wasn't angry either, and fondly stretched out his finger and flicked her forehead. Stinky girl. You siblings haven't seen each other for a long time. We won't disturb you catching up. One of the three got up and said with a smile. The others also got up consciously to leave. Bai Luo Yin gently reminded Lu Muting to drink some more porridge before leaving with the three. After the few people left, Lu Muyen tossed the spoon in her hand into the bowl, then took out a set of a sound insulation array that she had refined already and tossed it out. The array instantly lined up in the room and a transparent light enveloped the entire room. Little sister, you don't like Luo Yin? Lu Muting and Lu Muyen were twins. Although she had been smiling the entire time just now, but he knew that she didn't like Bai Luo Yin. Yeah. I don't like her. So what's big brother going to do? Lu Muyen asked as she blinked with a smile. Lu Muting sighed and said, if you don't like, then you don't like. He actually didn't know what to do either, but comparing Lu Muyen to Bai Luo Yin, naturally his little sister was more important. Of course, he also sincerely hoped that the two could interact peacefully. Big brother, is it that conflicting? Lu Muyen stretched out her hand and pinched Lu Muting's handsome face. As long as you like her, then that's fine. Not to mention that young Miss Bai doesn't necessarily like me. Lu Muyen added with a deeper meaning. That woman probably already cursed her over and over again inwardly. Just now, when she acted intimately with her big brother, although the displeasure in Bai Luo Yin's eyes was fleeting, but she still caught it. Little mischievous. Lu Muting patted her head helplessly. She has a soft temper and indeed can't easily get along with you. Lu Muyen thought about it, then asked, big brother, how did you fall in love with Bai Luo Yin? Do you know her family background? Qin Feng and I formed the Mu Feng mercenary, and during a mission, he was severely injured and happened to meet Luo Yin who was a physician. Her medical skills are very good. Qin Feng's injury recovered quickly. Because Luo Yin's parents already passed away, she's always been alone, so Qin Feng invited her to join the mercenary group. She considered it for 2 days before agreeing. She has a soft and gentle temper, and very kind. We've been looked after by her for the last year a lot. The last time I was on a mission, I was being chased. Later, I used the power in my seal to kill those people, but I also almost died. Lu Muting said. Lu Muyen raised an eyebrow and said, then Bai Luo Yin rescued you, then took good care of you until you were healed. How'd you know? Lu Muting asked stupidly. Guess I'm smart. Lu Muyen concealed the killing intent in her eyes and said jokingly, big brother, you're so stupid and simple sometimes. You need to experience more. There was deeper meaning behind her words, but she didn't make it clear. Hey! You stinky girl actually called me stupid. Lu Muting rubbed her hair again and smiled helplessly with pampering. Lu Muyen stopped talking about Bai Luo Yin. She took out the fire cloud mink and stuffed it to Lu Muting. This is my gift to you. This fire cloud mink is a mutated tier 7 demonic beast. After contracting, it'll help you a lot. This fire cloud mink is of the same litter as yours? Lu Muting clearly liked the fire cloud mink when he held it. The fire cloud mink in his arms felt a cold air pressure from Lu Muyen's shoulders and couldn't resist trembling. Mo Yen glanced at Lu Muting and sighed inwardly. They're born together, so why are they so different? The younger sister is smart, cunning, and black-bellied, with a damned lot of mindfulness, yet the elder brother was upright, sunny, and lacking in scheming. These two really were two extremes. Lu Muyen said with a smile, not from the same litter. Let me make a contract for you first. Then Lu Muyen helped Lu Muting contract the fire cloud mink and instructed him not to make known about the pills and things that she had given him. She also told him to be more mindful in general and to learn to look at people's hearts instead of just looking at their surface. Lu Muting rarely saw her, so her nagging just felt very warm to him, and he took all her words to heart. He and Lu Mubai were two complete and utter siscons, so it was natural to feel that all of what his little sister said was right. Noticing that the time was getting late, Lu Muyen left the inn under Lu Muting's reluctant gaze. After returning to the courtyard where the 8 Extremes sect was located, Mo Yen was silent for a while, but still couldn't resist saying, there's something wrong with that woman named Bai Luo Yin. She has a peak phase sword sovereign cultivation base, but she used a special secret skill to disguise herself as an initial phase sword monarch. I know. There was no smile on Lu Muyen's face this time and her entire body exuded a chill. Since you know, then why didn't you tell your elder brother? It would be inappropriate to keep such a woman with ulterior motives by your elder brother's side. Mo Yen didn't understand Lu Muyen's actions at all. Lu Muyen's eyes were stained with a rare look of pain and conflict ion, then she finally replaced it with a firm look. My second brother is different from my eldest brother. He grew up in the army and developed an upright and hot-blooded temperament. He's bright and cheerful without much scheming. After pausing a bit, she closed her eyes then opened them again, her eyes filled with heartache, yet he just has to have the rarest slaughterer constitution. Such a temper will only harm him. Even if he isn't killed one day by someone else, his consciousness would also be eroded by the power sealed in his body and he'd lose his mind. So you want to use that scheming woman to shock your brother and let him begin the path of the slaughterer? Mo Yen sighed, feeling complicated emotions. If only your eldest brother has the slaughter constitution and your second brother has the sword spirit constitution, then there wouldn't be a need for such concern. Yeah. Eldest brother has a cold temperament and also cultivated a method like the blood spirit skill. If he changed to the slaughterer constitution, then he'd get twice the result with half the effort. Although having a sword spirit constitution is good for his cultivation speed, but it's actually not suitable for him. Lu Muyen paused, then said helplessly, second brother's temperament is hot-blooded and upright, which is a perfect seedling for cultivating the righteous sword cultivation. It would be great if they could switch. Maybe it's not impossible. Mo Yen pondered for a bit, then said. Lu Muyen suddenly looked up at Mo Yen, you mean there's a way to help my two elder brothers change their constitutions? There's a long-lost secret method in Guangling world that could swap the constitutions between two people. Mo Yen said, because those who harbored evil intentions cultivated it successfully then used it to steal the fortuitous opportunities of those with spiritual bodies, so such a secret skill was jointly banned by the powerhouses of the four great regions. You know this secret skill? Lu Muyan's tone was affirmative. If there was a secret skill that could exchange the constitutions of the two, then why should she endure such heartache and pain to change Lu Mu Ting's personality? Mo Yen was silent for a long time before he said, I know the secret skill, but it must be performed at the right time and place, and it's very difficult. As long as there's hope, I won't give up. Lu Muyan's eyes were shining brightly. If there was a will, things would definitely come true. For the sake of her two elder brothers, she would do it no matter how difficult. I think that maybe others might not be able to do it, but you should be able to. Mo Yen and Lu Muyen had interacted for so long now and so he knew her temperament. The thing she decided to do, no matter how bitter or hard it would be to do, she wouldn't give up. That tenacity was the strongest in the people he had met. I'll definitely do it. Lu Muyen clenched her fists. Lu Mubai and Lu Muting were two of the most important people in her life, and she would do it no matter the cost. If you don't need to shock your second brother to begin the path of the slaughterer, then should we deal with that woman now? Mo Yen asked. Not right now. I can see that my second brother's feelings for her are mainly based on that so-called life-saving grace. He's only misled by Bai Luo Yin into thinking that he's in love with her right now. It's better to let him slowly reveal the other party's true face. It's about time he matured a bit more. Although Lu Muyen felt sorry for Lu Muting, but for his future, he could only experience a bit more blows. There was a slight smile in Mo Yan's eyes. If your elder brother finds out, I wonder if he'd beat you up. Lu Muyen rolled her eyes at him. My big brother spoils me the most, how could he be willing to beat me up? Now that she knew of the existence of the secret skill from Mo Yen, the huge stone that pressed on her heart could finally be put down. Why did that woman approach your second brother? Mo Yen said, I checked her earlier and found that she doesn't have the wood attribute elemental energy and is indeed not an alchemist. So her purpose of approaching your brother shouldn't be for the Lu clan's pill stores. It's simple, it's for my big brother's slaughterer constitution. Lu Muyen sneered, and a killing intent spread in the room. Then you're not worried about her acting out now? Mo Yen asked. She won't. Since she can hide it so deeply, then there must be some hidden secrets. I suspect that there are people behind her. Now isn't the time to hit the grass and alert the snakes. Lu Muyen tapped the table lightly, I want to catch them all in one net. Then she rubbed the little white snake on her wrist, meow meow. Owner, do you want meow meow to protect your second brother? Meow meow flew from her hand to the ground and turned into a cute little girl with a sweet, tender voice. Lu Muyan's eyes contained a doting and admiration, my family's meow meow is the smartest. Although I don't want to be separated from owner, but meow meow wants to share the responsibilities with owner. Meow meow climbed onto Lu Muyen and sat on her lap, burying herself in her arms, acting like a spoilt child. She knew that owner attached great importance to that simple and stupid big brother, so although she was reluctant to leave Lu Muyen, but she would still go. There's no hurry. You can go after the grand competition of the sections. Lu Muyen patted Meow Meow's head, I put a tracking talisman on big brother, you can go find him then. After the grand competition, she wanted to first refine the lotus seeds of the 9 forms Ice King Lotus into pills for Meow Meow to consume to improve her strength. At that time, Bai Luo Yin's cultivation base wouldn't be able to do anything to the little girl. Only now did Mo Yen know that Lu Muyen had already calculated against that woman. No wonder she wasn't worried for Lu Muting's safety. If Meow Meow, this eccentric and clever, astute and cunning girl was brought to Lu Muting's side, that Bai Luo Yin definitely wouldn't be able to have a good time. Moreover, although this girl was young, but she was very strong, and could also protect Lu Muting. After settling the things that had been in her heart for a while, Lu Muyan's heart also felt a little more ethereal and a subtle feeling slowly rose. She didn't go out again and began to find that trace of inspiration. That night, in a hidden courtyard in Tianyuan City. Several people wearing cloaks stood respectfully. On the only stone seat in the courtyard sat a man in cyan cloth who was playing a round of Go with himself. Soon, a man wearing a black cloak hurried in and knelt in front of the man. Master, there's a new discovery. The man dropped a black Go piece without raising his head, speak. Yesterday, it wasn't Headmaster Hua who won the blood essence of the descendant of a heavenly phoenix but a newly promoted pupil of the inner sect, Lu Muyen. The man kneeling on the ground said. The man was slightly confused, how could she have that wealth? She took out a jar of the Scarlet Bee's millennium-old royal jelly, and heaven-rank water attribute spiritual items to exchange with Tianyuan City for 100 million spiritual stones. A newly promoted pupil would have such things? Does she have some sort of unknown background? The kneeling man replied cautiously, she's been accepted as a pupil by ancestor Tian Xian of the sect and her talent is very strong. After he finished speaking, he took out a dossier on Lu Mu Yen in the sect and handed it to the man in cyan clothes. Master, this is the news I collected in the sect. The cyan-clothed man placed his go-piece down, then said in surprise, so she's the pupil who's said to have killed Shen Mufeng by luck. He didn't believe it when he heard the news at first and just thought Lu Mu Yen took advantage of what Lan Si did, but after reading the news on the jade slip, he didn't think so anymore. Immediately activate a mortal rank assassination order. The cyan-clothed man commanded coldly. Yes. The people present replied respectfully. Can you get close to Lu Mu Yen? The cyan-clothed man asked. The person kneeling on the ground replied, we're all pupils of the 8 extreme sect who's participating in the 6 major sects grand competition this time. It shouldn't be difficult to get close. No matter what the price is, find a chance to kill her. The cyan-clothed man said coldly. Yes. The kneeling man left the courtyard after accepting the order. The cyan-clothed man picked up a white go piece and placed it on the go board, then said softly, geniuses don't live long. Early the next morning, the pupils of the 8 extreme sect rushed towards the heavenly secret palace on the flying magic tool of Headmaster Feng. Previous chapter. Heavenly Secret Palace was built on a large lake that was true north of Tianyuan City. When the 8 extreme sects flying magic tool arrived at an absurdly large lake where even the borders couldn't be seen, Headmaster Feng took out a red spar the size of a palm and activated it. One watched as the spar turned into a red light and entered the bottom of the lake. The surface of the lake sparkled and began to ripple slowly. In a moment, a quaint stone gate rose from the lake and slowly opened. Headmaster Feng controlled the flying magic tool to pass through the gate. After entering the gate, the flying magic tool didn't stop, but flew straight into the depths. After flying for about an hour, large and small islands suspended above the lake loomed and strips of rainbows formed from spiritual force hung over the islands. Graceful white cranes soared in the air and the aquatic demonic beasts leapt out from the bottom of the lake from time to time, bringing with it splashes of water. Heavenly Secret Palace's scene was like a fairyland and spiritual force here was much richer than that of the 8 extreme sect. In the Heavenly Secret Palace exists a spiritual spring. The spiritual force here is much stronger than the other 5 sections. There's a reason why their strength ranks first. Headmaster Feng sighed. Huoling Long stood on the magic tool and looked around, then said, the Heavenly Secret Palace is this strong not only because the sect's spiritual force is stronger than the other 5 sects, but because their foundations are also very deep. While the two spoke, the flying magic tool landed on the largest island above the lake. Headmaster Feng and Huoling Long walked down the flying magic tool with their pupils, and an elder from the Heavenly Secret Palace greeted them with a smile with 2 pupils. Headmaster Hua, Headmaster Feng, how are you? Long time no see, Elder Lien. Headmaster Feng said politely with a smile. Huoling Long nodded lightly as a greeting. The residence of the 8 extreme sect is already prepared. The 2 of you, please come with me. Elder Lien smiled and led the group of people in one direction. As he walked, he introduced the surrounding scenery to Lu Mu Yen and the other pupils in a kind and friendly manner. After about an hour, they arrived at connected courtyards, then walked into the innermost courtyard and Elder Lien said, Headmaster Feng, Headmaster Hua, you have a good rest for the next couple of days. If there's anything, you can send a communication talisman to me. Then he pointed to the 2 pupils of the Heavenly Secret Palace and said, the 2 of them are the pupils in charge of taking care of the 8 extreme sect pupils and they can be summoned if there is anything. Alright, then I will trouble Elder Lien. Headmaster Feng said with a smile. The 2 exchanged a few more words then Elder Lien left. All of you find a room to rest in. Tomorrow I will let someone take you around Heavenly Secret Palace for a look. Headmaster Feng looked at the pupils and said. Pupil obeys. As night gradually arrived, Lu Mu Yen set up an array in the room and began to refine pills. Grade 6 pills would attract a thunder tribulation, so she didn't take out the 9 forms Ice Lotus King seeds to refine, but instead refined some grade 5 pills that could help improve her cultivation base and replenish her elemental energy. The next day, the 2 pupils of the Heavenly Secret Palace took Lu Mu Yen and the others to tour the Heavenly Secret Palace under the orders of Headmaster Feng. My name is Liang Yu, he's Gao Tong. Junior brothers and junior sisters, if you have any questions, you can ask us. Liang Yu said to the crowd with a gentle smile. Then we will trouble senior brothers to lead us to tour Heavenly Secret Palace today. Luo Cheng's attitude was more polite, but he was neither humble nor arrogant. No problem, let's go. After leaving the courtyard where the 8 extreme sect was located, Lu Mu Yen saw that there were also pupils from the Heavenly Secret Palace in the courtyards beside them, bringing pupils from the other sects out. They looked as if they were about to meet. Hey, isn't this a fellow Taoist from the 8 extreme sect? A pupil of the vast mountain sect saw Lu Mu Yen and the others approaching, then said with an ambiguous tone while smiling, you're living in the last courtyard again. I wonder when this position of 10,000 year number 1 will change. The 10,000 year number 1 naturally referred to backwards number 1. The pupils of the other sects also came over, and after hearing his words, they laughed constantly. They also truly looked down on the 8 extreme sect, the constant 10,000 year number 1. Lu Mu Yen felt that such provocation was boring, but the expressions of the other pupils in the sect revealed anger. Luo Cheng's eyes were grim, but he smiled and ridiculed, our 8 extreme sect is the 10,000 year number 1 but isn't your vast mountain sect the 10,000 year number 2? Number 1 sounds better than number 2. Humph, you sure aren't embarrassed to say it. The vast mountain sect's pupil snorted coldly and sneered, "It seems that you're willing to be the 10,000-year number one. I wonder if the superiors of the 8 extreme sect will praise you for having such ambitions." Luo Cheng was furious and was about to open his mouth to ridicule back, but was stopped by Lu Muyen. "Is this kind of bickering interesting? Whether we'll be 10,000-year number one or not, we'll find out after the sect's grand competition. It's a waste of time talking so much to him." Lu Muyen originally didn't want to talk too much, but seeing that the rest were watching the joke of their two major sects bickering, she really found it boring. Then she telepathically said to Luo Cheng, "Don't you see the pupils of the other sects are watching our joke? You want to act like monkeys for them to watch?" Luo Cheng took a deep breath. Seeing that the pupils of the other sects were indeed watching their joke, he glared at the pupil of the vast mountain sect and said, "Well, see who's better in the sect's grand competition." Lu Muyan's identity was currently largely different to theirs. Since she spoke out to stop this, he still needed to give her this face. "Sure. I'd sure like to see how your 8 extreme sect changes the position of 10,000-year number one." The pupil of the vast mountain sect argued noisily with disdain. Seeing that the pupils of the 8 extreme sect and the vast mountain sect didn't fight as they usually did before the grand competition, the pupils of the other sects walked away with slight disappointment. When passing the pupils of the vast mountain sect, Lu Muyen narrowed her eyes slightly, then flicked her finger beneath her sleeve and a wisp of pale cyan smoke that no one noticed entered his nostrils. This pupil's mouth was too unpleasant. It wasn't too bad to let him be a mute during this time at the heavenly secret palace. She liked to secretly scheme against someone the most. Liang Yu and Gao Tong took the group to tour several islands of the heavenly secret palace, then took them to the commercial street of the heavenly secret palace for a walk. The commercial street of the heavenly secret palace was more prosperous and livelier than that of the 8 extreme sect, and there was even more variety in the stores. Lu Muyen swept up a lot of spiritual herbs, beast leather, spars, and such items. The pupils of the 8 extreme sect had already seen Lu Muyen's wealth, so they were already numb to her constant shopping. However, Liang Yu and Gao Tong thought that such prodigal behavior was just too exaggerated. Even they, veteran pupils, couldn't help but feel as if their flesh hurt. Most importantly was the attitude of the pupils of the 8 extreme sect. There was not much surprise about this woman's prodigal ability. Moreover, the two observed that although the pupils of the 8 extreme sect had deliberately alienated Lu Muyen, they still had a kind of respect for her. The two remembered this, and after they returned, they went to investigate Lu Muyen, and her dossiers also appeared in the hands of the pupils who participated in the competition here at the heavenly secret palace. After a day's worth of shopping, Lu Muyen began her seclusion again. The next day when they continued to tour the heavenly secret palace, she didn't participate. In the early morning of the third day, a melodious bell rang over the island. The pupils of the 6 major sects were all in high spirits and ready to begin. They all wanted to be a wonder in this grand competition. After the bell stopped, Huo Linglong and Headmaster Feng led Lu Muyen and the other pupils to the heavenly secret palace's battle arena, which officially began the prelude to the 6 major sects grand competition. Side note, for a few days now, I've run out of translated chapters that I saved up and have not been motivated. The grand competition between the 6 major sects was a grand event where the geniuses of the younger generation from the entire Tianling continent gathered. Each grand competition, there would always be 1 or 2 new stars that would be born, amazing everyone with 1 feat while blinding everyone. When the pupils of the 8 extreme sect arrived at the arena of the heavenly secret palace, the place was already filled with people. Each session of the grand competition was held in turn among the 6 major sects, and this time, it was the heavenly secret palace's turn. During the grand competition, all the pupils of the heavenly secret palace could come to the battle arena and watch the competition, even the factotum pupils were no exception. Therefore, the huge competition field was crowded at this time and the viewing platform was basically full. Each sect had a specific area, and when the pupils of the other sects entered the arena was still bustling with people doing their own thing. But when this year's heavenly secret palace's newly promoted inner sect pupils appeared, the entire competition field was boiling with excitement, and roaring and cheering resounded throughout the viewing platforms. Lu Muyen scanned the excited faces and said, "The heavenly secret palace is also very united." Zi Chaisher, who was sitting beside her, said with a smile, "During the grand competition, even those selfish pupils can put down their grievances and unite against the outside. Not only the heavenly secret palace, but also the pupils of the other sections. Are you implying that the pupils of our sect treat me a lot better than usual today because they want to unite against the outside?" Lu Muyen said jokingly. Zi Chaisher lowered his head and chuckled, "You sure are a woman who holds grudges." "Yeah. I've always been one to pay back the smallest grievances." Lu Muyen nodded. "Today are the preliminaries for the grand competition, are you nervous?" Zi Chaisher couldn't resist asking when he saw that lazy and nonchalant appearance. Lu Muyen chuckled, "What's there to be nervous about? It's not like we're going to the guillotine." Zi Chaisher and Jian Yang beside her couldn't resist twitching the corners of their lips when they heard what she said. "Who used this sort of metaphor? I wish you the best of luck in the 6 competitions." "Thank you. I will." Lu Muyen leaned lazily against the back of the chair and said with some boredom. The grand competition of the 6 major sects was divided into 3 parts: the preliminaries, the semi-finals, and the finals. Just by listening to the order of the names in the competitions, she knew that the preliminaries would be boring. The elite pupils of each sect would deliberately be separated from each other. Basically, during the 5 specialization competitions, one only needed to be at least a middle-level grade 3 to be able to advance. The pupils of the 8 extreme sect were very speechless about her attitude towards the competition. Was she too confident or did she lose confidence? Soon, another melodious bell rang, and the entire competition field became quiet. The sect leader of the Heavenly Secret Palace walked forward and said a bunch of welcomes to the pupils of all the sects here at Heavenly Secret Palace and some encouragement for the pupils to give it their all. Many pupils present were excited by his words, including the pupils of the 8 extreme sect. Only Lu Mu Yen casually leaned back on the chair and rested. Seeing Lu Mu Yen like this, Headmaster Feng really wanted to scold, but didn't dare to scold, for fear that if she didn't perform well in a bit, he would be blamed. You're just this untrusting of Lu girl? Hua Lng Long asked with amusement at Headmaster Feng's complicated look. Headmaster Feng glared at her. Well, isn't she a good pupil you taught? Such a situation right now, but she still looks lazy and as if she didn't care. She doesn't have any realization that this is a competition. Will there be problems later? As if there'd be any nonsense problem. Hua Linglong put on a lazy attitude like Lu Mu Yen. This is because she doesn't care for the preliminaries. Just place your heart back down. Headmaster Feng was angry when he saw the casual and heartless attitude of them both. He took a deep breath and was afraid that he would go crazy in public. After the sect leader of Heavenly Secret Palace finished speaking, a rather esteemed-looking elderly man stood in the air. This old man is the Vice Tower leader of the Pill Tower. This time, I was invited by the 6 major sects to preside over the competition. As the main referee of this competition, this old man will now announce the rules of the grand competition. There are 6 competitions in each of the preliminaries, semi-finals, and finals. In addition to the strength competition where you can freely reveal your talents, the other 5 specialization competitions are each conducted by the Pill Tower, the Array Alliance, the Refining Pavilion, and the Tamer's Pagoda's Elders. Those who pass will proceed to the next round. The individual rules for each competition will be announced by the referee when you compete. Alright, this old man won't say any more. I will now announce the official start of the triennial competition of the 6 major sects. All the pupils participating in the competition will participate in sequence according to their number plates. Anyone who dares to violate the rules will be immediately disqualified from the competition. The Vice Tower leader of the Pill Tower said in a loud and serious voice before disappearing in the air. The referees who preside over the 6 major sects grand competition are all from other forces? Lu Mu Yen asked Zi Che Shi in a whisper. In order to ensure fairness, this is the case each session and who the chief referee will be will also take turns between the Pill Tower, Smithing Pavilion, Array Alliance, and Tamer's Pagoda. Zi Che Shi replied in a whisper. Lu Mu Yen nodded and continued to ask, will top forces like the Ming Chamber of Commerce Alliance and the Mercenary Alliance also send people to participate in the grand competition of the 6 major sects? Naturally they would come. The grand competition among the pupils of the 6 major sects is a major event on Tianling continent. Other top forces would also want to come to inquire about some geniuses of the various sections. Zi Che Shi said. So that's how it is. Lu Mu Yen nodded. Afterwards, a crystal wall with words engraved in an array suddenly rose up on the competition arena and on it densely displayed the competition order of the preliminaries. Seeing that her name was one of the first, she smiled and said to Zi Che Shi, it's my turn, I'll go first. Zi Che Shi saw that for the alchemy competition, Lu Mu Yen was in the first set, so he said with a smile, junior sister, go ahead. After the alchemy competition, you'll be participating in the array competition. Lu Mu Yen said indifferently, turned around and went to the alchemy preliminaries competition ground. Aside from her, other sects also had talented pupils who would participate in various different competitions, so the referee would deliberately separate the order of these people so that there was time for them to participate in the competitions they had registered for. There were 2 referees standing at the front of the competition table and one of them said, the pupils whose names we read out are to enter the arena in turn and wait in front of the corresponding table numbers. The other person took a list and started to read the names. When he read one, the pupil with the corresponding name would walk to the stone table with the same number and stand. Lu Mu Yen was at number 10, in front. There were 10 competitors in each set, with exactly 3 sets. After the pupils took their places, a referee began to read out the rules. The preliminaries for the alchemy competition are divided into 3 rounds. The pupils who succeed in all 3 rounds can enter the semifinals. If one fails a round, they will be eliminated. You have 3 sets of the same pill ingredients to refine and the name of the pill you need to refine on your respective tables. The pupils who have successfully refined them will continue to the next round. You each have 3 chances in each round, and if you fail all 3 times, then you will be eliminated directly. The referee paused and said, of course, if the first set of materials is successfully refined, then there's no need to continue, just wait for the second round to begin. Alright, the competition begins now. Thank you everyone for your encouragement. All you readers give me motivation to continue. In front of the 10 pupils who participated in the alchemy competition, there was a stone table with 3 trays, and on each tray was a set of spiritual herbs for alchemy. The fire and pill cauldron used for alchemy needed to be prepared themselves. Lu Mu Yen picked up the paper on the table and looked at it. On it was a grade 3 energy nourishing pill formula. The energy nourishing pill was a general medicine used for treating internal and external injuries, and its effect was very good. After placing the paper down on the table, she found that several other people had already taken out their own cauldrons and started refining pills with their elemental energy flame. She took out the cyan cauldron, reached out, tossed all the spiritual herbs in the first tray into the pill cauldron, condensed a cluster of fire elemental energy and tossed it into the pill cauldron. Refining grade 3 pills was very easy to her right now, so she didn't have to worry about it at all. The situation there was quickly noticed by others. It couldn't be helped. Everyone else was slowly refining and condensing the spiritual herbs one by one. Only Lu Muyen tossed all the spiritual herbs into the cauldron altogether. It was difficult not to attract attention. The leaders of the 5 major sects and the headmasters of the heavenly secret palace sat on one side of the very front of the viewing platforms and the referees sat above. The headmaster of the alchemy school of the vast mountain sect saw Lu Muyen toss the spiritual herbs into the cauldron altogether and said with a smile to Headmaster Feng, "The pupils of your 8 extreme sect sure has talent. This is the first time I've seen a person throw all the spiritual herbs into the pill cauldron at once when refining pills. Is there no one in your alchemy school to send this time?" Headmaster Feng had been paying attention to Lu Muyen the entire time. When he saw that she picked up the spiritual herbs on the tray and threw them all into the pill cauldron altogether, he just wanted to find a hole to bury himself into. He roared inwardly. Ho said Lu Muyen was a grade 4 alchemist. He promises not to beat them to death. How did such a technique in refining alchemy look like something an alchemist would do? It was simply the performance of someone who didn't know how to refine pills at all. Hearing the words of the headmaster of the alchemy school of the vast mountain sect, the headmasters of the other schools all stifled their laughter. In fact, they couldn't figure out why the 8 extreme sect chose a pupil who didn't even understand the technique and sequencing in refining pills to participate in the alchemy competition. Did they really have no one to send? Huo Long saw that the other headmasters of the 5 sects revealed a look of gloating, and the vast mountain sect's headmaster even had a smile of mockery on his face. She snorted coldly, "You haven't seen anyone else refine pills like this, but it doesn't mean people can't refine it like this. What a bunch of ignorant old things." She didn't dare to make a statement about other aspects, but she was certain that Lu Muyen should be able to refine a grade 3 pill. After all, so many beauty-nourishing pills that were gifted to her was all refined by Lu Muyen herself. Headmaster Feng really wanted to cover Huo Long's mouth. Saying such words at this time, wouldn't it be even more embarrassing if Lu Muyen failed in a bit? "Huo Long, your 8 extreme sect sure is filled with talents. There's even such a brilliant pill refining technique. As a grade 6 alchemist, I can't help but admire it." The elder of the vast mountain sect cupped his hands and continued to smirk. The ridicule in his words wasn't concealed at all, but he didn't dare to offend Huo Long too much, otherwise it wasn't impossible to be beaten in public. "Sure. Then open your eyes and watch." Huo Long glanced at him coldly. These damned old things from the vast mountain sect only knew how to jump about. The vice tower leader of the pill tower and the several referees were sitting at the very top, very close to Huo Long and the others, so they naturally also heard their conversation. An elder from the smithing pavilion smiled and asked the chief referee, "Old Han, what do you think? I personally don't think that little girl looks like she can refine pills." Old Han placed his gaze on Lu Muyen, then said after a bit, "She can refine pills. My guess is that her mental energy should be very strong. Others need to slowly refine the spiritual herbs one by one, but she can refine a bunch altogether." "There's such an alchemy technique?" the elder of the smithing pavilion asked curiously. "There are such alchemists, but very few. Whether that girl is a genius of such type or not, we will know when she finishes refining." Old Han's gaze never moved, and there was a hint of interest in his eyes. Not only did the superiors above pay attention to Lu Muyen's situation, but many other pupils also saw it. Many pupils who could refine pills were all sneering below, and the pupils of the 8 extreme sect were all swept over by numerous odd looks. Many people complained inwardly that if Lu Muyen couldn't refine pills, then just change her for someone else or just give up directly. On the alchemy competition's platform, Lu Muyen obviously didn't know that the many people present were inwardly laughing at her. After she probed her mental energy into the cauldron, she quickly controlled her elemental energy flame to wrap all the spiritual herbs one by one, refining them into powder, then immediately began to condense the pill. A moment later, when others had not finished refining the spiritual herbs, with a casual slap, 5 lustrous and round pills flew out of the cauldron. With a beckon of her hand, the pills instantly fell into the porcelain bottle on the table. "Referees, I'm finished." She looked at the referees of the alchemy competition and said. The two had discovered Lu Muyen's technique in refining alchemy earlier, and they were a little unhappy when they saw her tossing the spiritual herbs into the pill cauldron all at once. In their eyes, alchemy was a sacred thing. This girl didn't know alchemy yet still came here to mess around. She truly was too ignorant. But gradually, they felt an inkling of something. Her alchemist's flame was controlled very well and there was no sound of failure coming from the cauldron when the spiritual herbs were being refined. Now, seeing that she actually refined the pills in such a short time, they all felt that it basically blinded their eyes. The 2 referees walked to Lu Muyen at the same time and poured out one of the pills she refined. Then the 2 of them revealed shock in their eyes, and one of them announced, 8 extreme sect. Lu Muyen refined 5 high-quality essence-nourishing pills and passed the first round. Hearing the result announced by the referee, the expressions of the people who had just ridiculed Lu Muyen earlier now looked very nice. They really didn't expect that pills could be refined like this. And wasn't this too fast? The most important thing was that she not only took 1/10 of the time of others to refine the pill, but the quality and rate of pill production was also surprisingly high. You old things, keep your eyes open wide. The pupils in Liaoniang's school are just this talented. After hearing the referee's announcement, Huo Long smugly swept the other headmasters whose expressions were constantly changing and boasted. She just loved to take advantage of an opportunity and slap faces the most. Haha, the headmaster of the vast mountain sect said with a fake smile, "This girl must be your trump card for the alchemy competition this time, right? You sure hit it well, it's truly opened our eyes." He said this on the surface, but he was choking inside. He didn't expect to only just finish ridiculing the other party when the little girl slapped his cheek with facts. Judging from the time, quality, and rate of pills that this girl was able to refine, she should be an alchemist higher than grade 4. Headmaster Feng, that damned old man, even revealed a look as if he also didn't believe she could refine pills like they did. His acting skills sure was convincing. If Headmaster Feng knew what he was thinking, he definitely would have spit him a face full of blood. He was also frightened by it, alright? He didn't even know that Lu Mu Yen knew such a technique in alchemy. If he knew, even at the risk of being beaten by Hu Linglong, he would have dug Lu Mu Yen over to the alchemy school. Previous chapter. Most of the alchemists present didn't have low attainments. At first, when they saw Lu Mu Yan's brainless way of refining pills by tossing all the spiritual herbs in, they were certain that she didn't know alchemy. But after carefully observing her alchemy techniques, they found that she was very skilled in both the refining of the spiritual herbs and the control of heat. Did this look like someone who didn't know alchemy? Based on this girl's appearance, she isn't yet 20 years old, right? Judging from her current proficiency in refining grade 3 pills, she should be a grade 4 alchemist. Isn't her talent in alchemy too strong? An elder from the smithing pavilion sighed. As for being a grade 5 alchemist, they didn't even think it was a possibility. The vice tower leader of the pill tower stroked his gray beard and smiled. This girl is still holding back and hasn't used her all. She's a good seedling. What? She's still holding back? The several other referees were surprised. Well, no, if we keep watching. The chief referee smiled lightly and stopped talking. On the competition arena of the alchemy competition, the other 9 people were bewildered when they heard the news announced by the referee and looked askance at Lu Mu Yen, scrutinizing her. Many laughed bitterly inside. This year's alchemy competition not only had the 2 peerless geniuses by Fei Yao from the Heavenly Secret Palace, and Wei Yu from the Medicine Sect, but now there's a Lu Mu Yen who popped out from somewhere that didn't play the cards by the rules and whose skills were unknown. Could they leave a path that led to survival for them so-called alchemy geniuses at least? Referee, can I start refining the pills for the second round? Lu Mu Yen asked with slightly furrowed brows when she... The 2 referees were stunned. According to the rules, they had to wait for everyone to finish refining, but Lu Mu Yen was just too fast. Let her continue. The chief referee's voice entered the ears of the 2. All right. You can go straight to the second round. A referee suppressed the surprise in his heart and nodded, then ordered someone to bring up the spiritual herbs on a tray for the second round's competition. Lu Mu Yen picked up the pill's name and looked at it. On it was written middle-level grade 3 force nourishing pill. She had some guesses now. The first round was low-level grade 3 energy nourishing pill, the second round was middle-level grade 3 force nourishing pill, and the third round should be a high-level grade 3 pill. It wasn't only the level of the pills that was increasing, but it was also a test of the alchemist's alchemy techniques and the grade of the alchemist. She picked up all the spiritual herbs in the first tray and threw them all into the cauldron, controlled elemental energy flame to refine each of them one by one at the same time, then fused the piles of powder into pills. After an incense stick of time, 5 round and lustrous pills flew out of the pill cauldron, and she placed them into a porcelain bottle on the table. Referee, I'm done. Lu Mu Yen said. The 2 referees checked it, then announced, 8 Extreme Sect Lu Mu Yen has refined 5 high-quality force-nourishing pills and passed the second round. Only after Lu Mu Yen finished the second round did the other people around her slowly complete the first round one after another. Can I continue to the third round? Lu Mu Yen asked. She also needed to participate in the array competition in a bit, so she didn't want to delay too much time here. After the 2 referees received the chief referee's telepathy, they immediately ordered someone to bring up the tray of spiritual herbs for the third round. Sure, you can start now. Because of her speed and alchemy technique, she attracted many pupils to watch, and alchemists accounted for most of them. Lu Mu Yen picked up the pill formula for the third round and took a look. On it was written high-level grade 3 elemental condensing pill. Without any hesitation, she tossed all the spiritual herbs in the first tray into the pill cauldron and began refining and condensing the pill. An hour later, 5 round and lustrous pills flew out of the cauldron and fell into the porcelain bottle on the table. Referee, I've finished refining. The 2 referees were already numb to her refining techniques and speed. They opened the bottle and poured out a pill, then both revealed expressions of as expected. 8 Extreme Sect Lu Mu Yen refined 5 high-quality elemental condensing pills and passed the third round, directly qualifying for the semifinals. A referee announced. When Lu Mu Yen heard the result, her expression was still nonchalant, and she asked with a light smile, Referee, can I go now? The 2 referees were stunned for a moment. Those around her were still refining pills, but she indeed had nothing to do with it now. You can go. 3 days later, come participate in the semifinals of the alchemy competition. A referee said. All right. Thank you very much. After speaking, she stepped out of the alchemy competition's arena. When she waked out of the arena, she found that a lot of eyes locked onto her tightly, but she pretended not to notice and walked towards the location of the array competition. And her every move had long been noted by others. On the seats of the 6 major sects, each headmaster had varying expressions. Aside from Headmaster Feng and Hu Linglong, the other headmasters were all completely stunned while also unable to resist classifying Lu Mu Yen as a strong opponent against their pupils in the alchemy competition. Congratulations to Headmaster Feng and Headmaster Hua. This pupil named Lu Mu Yan's talent in alchemy is expected to be in the top 5. The headmaster of the medicine sect said with a smile. He felt a little pity inwardly. A pupil like Lu Mu Yen with extremely strong mental energy and the ability to control fire so exceptionally was such a waste in a place like the 8 Extreme Sect. Headmaster Feng smiled humbly and replied, you overpraise, you overpraise. Whether she can make it into the top 5 still depends on her next performances. However, after watching Lu Muyan's performance in refining pills, he couldn't help but feel hope inwardly. Who cares for the top 5? Huo Linglong said proudly, the top 3 is our goal. The other headmasters couldn't resist twitching the corners of their lips. This demoness Huo Linglong was given a compliment and now she was bragging. Lu Muyan did indeed look rather talented right now and her alchemy technique was also rather novel and time-saving. But this didn't mean that she could refine a bunch of spiritual herbs at the same time when refining grade 4 pills, and also maintain such quality. Even if she was a grade 4 high-level alchemist, there was still hope to compete for third, but first and second was probably impossible. Bai Fei Yao and Wei Yu were both grade 5 alchemists, and they were definitely the elites among the newly promoted pupils of the 6 major sects. She was still very far behind. After Lu Muyan left, a grim look flashed across Bai Fei Yao's eyes. It seemed that this woman who robbed her of her wind element comprehension stone indeed had some tricks. There was an arc of ridicule on her lips. That was fine. With Lu Muyan's current strength, when the time came, she should be able to match her. By then, she would let Lu Muyan know her fate after offending her. On the medicine sect's viewing platform, a solitary person that appeared as gentle as jade sat, and his long, phoenix-shaped eyes flashed with battle intent. Lu Muyan. This woman gave him a mysterious and eerie feeling. It seemed that his opponent this time wasn't only Bai Fei Yao, but also Lu Muyan. Lu Muyan waited a little at the arena for the array competition, then soon it was her turn. Evidently, her sequence was individually adjusted by the referees. The rules of the array competition were similar to those of the alchemy competition and was also divided into 3 rounds. It was just that now it wasn't about refining things but using the array tools that had already been refined to arrange the required array. This time, there were no 3 sets of arrays, but instead there was a time limit. The first round required the array to be set up within 2 hours, and those who didn't successfully set it up within the time limit would be eliminated immediately. Lu Muyan walked to her specified place, picked up the array requirements on the table and took a look. Because of Lu Muyan's performance in the alchemy competition's preliminaries, more people paid attention to her during the array competition. The headmasters of the 6 major sects and the referees on the referees' seats all turned their attention to her. She reached out and picked up the array tools on the table, formed seals with her hands, then drew several spiritual runes in the air to insert into the array flag. The array flag flew up with a dazzling cyan light and the array tools were positioned around her. When the array flag slowly unfolded, the initial level grade 3 array linked together. Watching Lu Muyan set up the first array in less than an incense stick of time, the headmasters of each school began to consider her differently. Referees, done. The 2 referees checked the array she had set up and announced, 8 extreme sect pupil Lu Muyan completed the first round of the array competition. Next, she quickly completed the second and third rounds, and the time she took arranging each array didn't exceed an incense stick of time. On the referees' seats. This girl's array attainments are even above her alchemy skills. The eyes of the elder of the array alliance lit up. Judging from her proficiency when arranging the array, she should be a grade 4 array master. This level of array attainments can be regarded outstanding even in your array alliance, right? The chief referee asked with a smile. Judging from her age, she can be considered a leader among the younger generation in the array alliance. The elder of the array alliance joked with slight regret, it's a pity she's a pupil of the 8 extreme sect, otherwise our array alliance definitely want her. If she wasn't a pupil of the 8 extreme sect, our pill tower wouldn't let her go either. The chief referee sighed. In the past, there was still a balance of talented pupils between the Pill Tower and the 6 major sects, but this time, the 2 super geniuses Bai Fei Yao and Wei Yu appeared, so they were now inferior. If this Lu Muyan could make it to the finals after the semi-finals, it will really break the balance of alchemists of the younger generation between the Pill Tower and the 6 major sects. The seats of the 6 major sects. Headmaster Feng, I heard that a pupil of your 8 extreme sect is going to participate in all 6 competitions. It seems that it's this Lu Muyan, right? A headmaster of the sword sect asked tentatively. Headmaster Feng's expression was glowing with glee and was absolutely satisfied with Lu Muyan, indeed. She's still young, so the sect wants her to experience a little more in this competition. What he said was very flexible. If Lu Muyan couldn't make it to the finals, then it would be nothing. She was sent here by the sect to experience. Lu Muyan's achievements were already pretty good for someone who wasn't yet 20. Of course, if she could advance to the finals, then it would gain huge face for the 8 extreme sect. Headmaster Feng, you're too modest. I think this girl still has a good chance of entering the finals. The Sword Sect and the 8 Extreme Sect had a good relationship, so they had a good attitude when speaking to each other. Huo Linglong said with a smile, is there a need to say something so obvious? The headmasters of the 5 sects knew now. This demoness came to participate in the sect's grand competition just to show off. After the array competition finished, Lu Muyan walked to the taming competition. Soon, it was her turn, and her order was also adjusted by the referees. The taming competition is divided into 3 rounds. In each round, you must help the person we arranged to contract a demonic beast. The pupils who succeed in the contracting will enter the next round, and those who fail will be automatically eliminated. The demonic beasts that everyone is assisting to contract are the same. The competition starts now. Lu Muyan walked to her place where a pupil of Sword King Cultivation base stood. Beside him was a tier 5 ring-patterned lion. Without any hesitation, she opened the cage, and when the ring-patterned lion roared, she focused her mental energy and the ring-patterned lion instantly silenced. She placed her hand on the top of the ring-patterned lion's head and began to cast the contract skill. This time, instead of using the ancient contract skill, she used the contract technique that she learnt at the sex taming pagoda. In less than an incense stick of time, the ring-patterned lion demonic beast's crystal core was marked with a contract sealed by her. Drip a drop of blood essence on the head of this ring-patterned lion. She looked at the pupil and said. The pupil replied respectfully, yes. A drop of blood fell on the head of the ring-patterned lion and quickly entered, then a soft white light enveloped the one person and one beast. After a while, the contract was successful. The others were still communicating with the ring-patterned lion, but Lu Mu Yen had already completed the contract. Those who competed with her in this round looked at her with horror. She ignored those exploratory and surprised gazes and asked to continue to the next round as usual. The second round was to help contract an initial phase tier 6 demonic beast, and the third round required her to help contract a peak phase tier 6 demonic beast. She completed each in an incense stick of time. When the referee announced that she had entered the semi-finals, she got up and exited the arena. She didn't remain and instead returned straight back to her residence. Her performance in the 3 competitions just now already caused more than half the pupils to pay attention to her. She was too lazy to face those gazes, so she withdrew to wait for the remaining 3 competitions on the second day. Headmaster Feng. Just where did you find this little girl? The headmaster of the Spirit Tamers sect concealed the shock in his eyes and asked with a smile. Headmaster Feng himself also didn't expect that Lu Mu Yen would leave behind such a jaw-dropping performance in the 3 competitions earlier. Lu Mu Yen was dug over by Elder AO of our 8 Extremes sect from the other elders of your 5 sects during the Tianling Continental Tournament for hegemony. The headmasters of the other 5 sects were all stunned, obviously not expecting that there was this sort of twist and turn. They couldn't resist complaining inwardly that the elders who went to the Tianling Continental Tournament for hegemony were incompetent. All 5 of their sects were stronger than the 8 Extreme sect, yet in the end she was dug over by A.O. Rong, that damned old thing. How embarrassing. Although Lu Mu Yen passing the 3 competitions attracted the attention of many people, but it didn't cause any sensation. After all, this was only the preliminaries. The real time to see the difference was the semi-finals and the finals. The next day, Lu Mu Yen followed the pupils of the 8 Extreme sect to the competition arena early in the morning. She discovered that the pupils of the sect had a much better attitude towards her, and the sense of alienation wasn't as strong as before. Many even kept praising her for being so amazing, but she just smiled and said nothing. The coming first round was the talisman competition. The rules were the same as the alchemy competition. She completed each round in less than an incense stick of time and directly entered the semi-final. The rules for the smithing competition were also the same. She still completed each round in less than an incense stick of time and passed all 3 rounds, entering the semi-finals. Next was the battle of strength. This girl is proficient in all 5 specializations. The elder of the smithing pavilion's eyes widened and marveled. The elder of the Array Alliance smiled brightly. Last time, there was that versatile genius Qi Xiu from Heavenly Secret Palace. Could it be this time the 8 Extreme sect will also give birth to a versatile genius? I can't judge how she is in the 5 specializations yet, but her cultivation base is a little unpresentable in terms of battle strength. The chief referee of the Pill Tower said. The other referees nodded in agreement. Among the pupils participating in the grand competition from the 6 major sects, only Lu Mu Yen was still at peak phase Sword Sovereign, while the rest were all Sword Venerable cultivation bases. I believe it's an error on the author's part, but the author wrote, twice, that LMY passed the preliminaries and entered finals instead of the semi-final. Lu Mu Yen walked to the strength competition area and waited for a while before it was her turn. The strength competition will be divided into 3 rounds in total. Only students who have won all of them can advance to the semi-finals, and those who have lost one round will be eliminated directly. During the battle, killing is not allowed, but other methods aren't restricted. Lu Mu Yen leapt up onto the battle stage. Her opponent was a middle-phase sword venerable from the vast mountain sect. Junior sister, just reveal your trump card directly, otherwise, with your cultivation base, you will only lead to a loss. Seeing that she was only at peak phase sword sovereign cultivation base, the other party said disdainfully. Lu Mu Yan's eyes curved with her smile, and she replied, then senior brother, receive it well. After speaking, before the other party could even react, she took out 3 grade 4 windfire talismans and smashed them out. Grade 4 windfire talismans were middle-level talismans and had a stacking effect. The 3 talismans she tossed out were something even advanced phase sword venerables would be injured by, so the opponent was blasted off the battle stage before he could even make a move and vomited a mouthful of blood then fainted. Be it the pupils watching them or the referees and sect superiors in their seats, they were all dumbfounded. You can fight in the strength competition like this? The headmaster of the sword sect coughed gently. In strength competitions, it wasn't that they hadn't seen any pupils using talismans before, but didn't they only carefully take out talismans towards the end of the battle when it was hard to determine the winner and loser? This Lu Mu Yen truly was eccentric. As soon as she stepped up she tossed out 3 grade 4 talismans and blasted the other party off the stage. They didn't even know what to say. Huo Ling Long chuckled, obviously satisfied with Lu Mu Yan's approach. Why can't we battle like this? Liaoniang's pupil is so poor she's only got talismans left, can't she? That girl probably didn't want to reveal her strength during the preliminaries, right? Although this kind of direct way of fighting by blasting with talismans was a little prodigal, but it was refreshing. All the headmasters present, including Headmaster Feng, couldn't resist twitching their lips. What did it mean that she was so poor that she only had talismans left? This demoness was simply too arrogant. The two referees were also taken aback and stared in a daze. Lu Muyen asked with a smile, I won this round, right? The two instantly snapped back, and one of them announced, 8 Extreme Sect. Lu Muyen wins the first round and continues to the second round. Who knew why, but it just so happened that Lu Muyen's second opponent was also a pupil of the Vast Mountain Sect. Junior sister, allow me to experience your talismans. As soon as the pupil of the Vast Mountain Sect came on stage, he immediately activated his elemental energy and condensed a layer of dark golden skin. Sure. Lu Muyen nodded with all smiles. The opponent was an advanced phase sword sovereign, and the strength of his body was comparable to that of a tier 8 demonic beast. The stacked power of the 3 wind fire talismans wouldn't be able to defeat him. Hearing her say such words, the pupil of the Vast Mountain Sect paid more attention and activated an elemental energy shield, then tossed a Saint Treasure shield out in front to block. Lu Muyen chuckled, and with 5 more talismans in her hand, all of different colors, she shook them. Senior brother, be ready. The pupil of the Vast Mountain Sect snorted coldly and launched a powerful air-shattering attack at Lu Muyen first. Lu Muyen didn't dodge either and tossed out all 5 talismans. Instantly, a roaring wind tornado swept out to dissolve the fist wind, then 4 giant dragons condensed of different colors of elemental energy sprang out from 4 directions. With layers stacking upon layers, finally, the pupil of the Vast Mountain Sect was heavily bombarded. Even though the pupil of the Vast Mountain Sect's body was very strong, but before a middle-level grade 4 talisman that was stacked 5 times, he still couldn't resist being blasted off the stage. Although he was an advanced phase sword venerable, but his situation was no better than the previous pupil after being blasted out and was also injured. Senior brother, let me win. Lu Muyen said with a nonchalant smile when she saw the other party clutching his chest and glaring at her in ragged clothes. That person almost spit out a mouthful of blood. The moment she came up, she smashed out 5 stacked grade 4 talismans. How shameless. Huoling Long, isn't the method used by this pupil from your sect a bit inappropriate? The Vast Mountain Sect's headmaster's expression darkened and darkened even more when he watched his 2 pupils being blasted out of the battle stage. Huoling Long raised an eyebrow, her glamorous face revealing an enchanting smile. You damned old thing, are you blind? The pupil of my sect took out the talismans and attacked them in an upright and direct manner, and she also cautioned your pupil beforehand. It's they who are too weak, but it's our fault. You're twisting words to force logic. The Vast Mountain Sect's headmaster said angrily. If they've got the balls, then they can also just smash talismans the moment they get on stage. Huoling Long glanced at him with contempt. Don't say it in such a high-sounding manner. If you lose, you lose. If you aren't reconciled, then you can come fight with Laonyang. The headmasters of the other schools didn't know whether to cry or laugh. Although Lu Muyen's method of smashing talismans made people feel it was taking advantage of loopholes, but the competition did indeed stipulate that any method could be used, so the Vast Mountain Sect didn't lose wrongfully. You think I don't dare? The headmaster of the Vast Mountain Sect was enraged by Huoling Long. He stood up and rolled up his sleeves to fight. Huoling Long snorted coldly, the pressure on her body fully released, then she took out a whip covered with dark red scales and was about to whip it towards him. Enough, stop causing trouble. Seeing that the two of them were really about to fight, the sect leader of the Heavenly Secret Palace immediately smiled and came out to be the mediator. Don't be so impulsive, it's not a good influence for you two to fight here. The headmaster of the Vast Mountain Sect knew immediately that he wouldn't be able to win this vicious demoness when Huoling Long unleashed her advanced phase sword saint pressure. Seeing that someone came to stop them, he took the opportunity to step back. Humph, good men don't fight women. He restrained his aura and sat back in his original position. Huoling Long's whip slanted to the side and the jade railing in the distance was smashed into rubble, then looked at him and threatened, you be careful these days. If you bother Laonyang promises not to whip you to death. Won't whip you to death, but it'll definitely make you unable to get out of bed for half a year. The face of the headmaster of the Vast Mountain Sect was even darker, but he knew that this demoness definitely could do what she said. His senior brother accidentally provoked Huoling Long a few years ago and was beaten by her to the point he laid in bed for 3 months before recovering from the injury. Ling Long, your temper is still so fiery. The sect leader of the Heavenly Secret Palace had a smile like a spring breeze on his handsome face and there was more patience in his tone. Huoling Long glanced at him and said coldly, you sure can act innocent. The sect leader of the Heavenly Secret Palace revealed some helplessness on his face, but the smile in his eyes couldn't be concealed. Your pupil is starting the 3rd round. Huoling Long moved her gaze to Lu Muyen, and her hand that gripped the whip tightened, her heart suffocating in discomfort. They hadn't met for a decade. So it seemed she still hated him so much. In the 3rd round, Lu Muyen met a middle phase sword venerable from the Heavenly Secret Palace. Although he immediately sacrificed some defensive magic tools as soon as he entered the battle arena, but he was still blasted off the battle stage by Lu Muyen's 4 talismans with stacked power. The news that she advanced to the semifinals by smashing talismans spread among the pupils of the various sects and everyone all thought that because of her low cultivation base, she didn't dare face her opponents head-on, so she used such a method. But at the same time, they also sighed that Lu Muyen was too prodigal. The cost price of materials for one grade 4 talisman was at tens of thousands of spiritual stones. In fact, she wasn't smashing talismans but spiritual stones.